The San Jose Sharks have made an absolute clusterfuck of moves. A lot of things around the NHL have happened, and it's time for Teal Tinted Glasses to weigh in. So here we go. Teal Tinted Glasses. But of course, if you want to be part of the show, be sure to follow us on all the social media. You know where to find us: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, maybe, probably not. You know, all those things. At tealtownusa.com. But we got a lot to get through, so let's get to the show. Tonight, as always, is Mr. Kevin Lacey. Kevin Lacey, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I feel like I am in the half of the Teal Town USA family who's okay. I don't know if anyone's truly happy with what's happened, but I think I'm at least okay with what's happened because I'm excited to see where things go. I think this is going to be a very interesting show for everyone to watch tonight because I think all three of us have very different opinions about where the franchise is going and what's happened here. So, but we will all try to remain friends by the end of this.
That's true. That's the goal. If we're friends by the end, I think we've done something good. Hockey Jerk, what's your thoughts on
Teal together?
Friends? Yes, tealing together.
No, I mean, I'm listening to Kevin talk, and he sounds like somebody who just got a 4-year deal from Mike Greer. Anyway,
we are state media.
38-year-old right-handed defenseman. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? I read the stats. You had a pretty good season this past one. No, you know what? I'm good. I feel like the line of happiness with the day's events, really the week's events. I feel like I've jumped back and forth across the line. So, depending on when it's my turn to talk later tonight, I guess we'll figure out what side of the line I'm on.
Sounds good. As for me, I am at Ian Blogs Hockey. I don't have a thingy on the screen. I don't know what happened there. That's fine. You guys know who I am. This could be my final show.
Mike Greer traded it.
Yeah, he did. He traded my nameplate. This could be my final show. Because you can see, I am going to get hired by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And,
wow,
my fandom isn't for free, but it can be bought.
Yeah.
The Sioux Greyhounds connection right there.
Yeah, and I know some people are going to be like, but Ian, you weren't actually a Greyhound. And you're right. I was never actually a Greyhound. But when I was like 12 in the old arena, I used to sell pop during Greyhound games. Like I had a little cart that I'd carry around and sell pop to people in the stands. I got to watch like the third period for free. Good times. So yeah, I mean, it could happen.
And for those of you out here in California, first off, he said pop and not right? Something else that starts with pa. Just so you know, we're a family-friendly show, despite that intro. And pop is cola or soda.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's just my Saint kicking in there.
And yeah, and you sold, as you said, obviously you sold some soda back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to, we don't want to get into too much inside baseball, but you were pretty friendly with a former Greyhound as well. So
it's true.
Hey, my question is, we're not going to start the show off with let's talk about the soda decisions at SAP Center, are we? We could
no.
I mean that for another time. Right?
I'm personally thrilled about it, but we don't have to talk about it.
I mean,
big news.
I feel bad, but as a person who drinks diet pop soda, whatever, like I feel bad for you guys because Diet Coke's ass.
There you have it.
All right. So I figured when I was trying to do the notes for today to try and figure out where to start, because there's so much has happened since we were here last, and this is like our first real talk about the Sharks show. Right? We haven't really done that. It's always been like, this guy's happening over here, and what's this team gonna do, and what's that team gonna do? Like tonight, it's a lot of Shark stuff. So I figured the best place to start, I guess, would be with the Balcers buyout, and then kind of work our way forward from there. So I know there's going to be stuff that has been covered on other shows. Bear with me, won't spend a bajillion time on it, but I figured it was a good place to start because I think it has to do with the entire big picture since Micro has basically taken over, right?
I mean, that's kind of the first roster related move, I guess you could say, unless you want to count, QOs for restricted free agents. But I feel as though the Balcers buyout, that's kind of the first move that directly impacts the NHL roster.
Yeah, so I figure that's a good place to start. I mean, if you guys want to talk about Dahlén and everything else, we can definitely touch on that too. But Rudy Balcers obviously had a year left on his contract, paying him 1.55 million, and it was, I think, 1.85 million in real dollars. Gets bought out by Mike Greer. The cap hit, I mean, if you're going to pick a guy to buy out, I mean, based on the cap hit for the buyout, it's painless. $8,334 this year, $300,000 next year. Balcers had 11 goals and 12 assists, 23 points, -3, and 20 penalty minutes in 61 games. He did put points on the board, probably not as many as you would like for a guy that was put in the position that he was in. But he did put points on. I know he got moved down the lineup more as time went on, but for the start of the season, I mean, he was basically in your top 6. So Jerk, what were your thoughts on the Balcers buyout?
So, and for those of you who listen to me on the 30 other podcasts I do, big fan of Balcers, so I was obviously very disappointed to see him get bought out. And I think, as you said, Ian, you probably want more from him in the offense department. But I think if you look, I mean, pretty much since he got stapled with Bordelot and Noah Gregor towards the end of the year was when his play really started to take off. I mean, he put up 3 goals and 2 assists in that period. I mean, that's 25% of his offense from the season was, in the last month. So it had seemed like he was finally in a position where he could best thrive and best provide positivity to the Sharks. I ultimately, grand scheme of things, I think you can find guys like Balcers pretty easily. I think they are a dime a dozen guys, but at the same time, with where this team is going, there has been a lot of confusion and a lot of uncertainty over the last few years. And I think Balcers has been one of the few guys where he's been consistent. Like, yeah, you're not going to get, 20 goals and 50 points from him, but, you can put him on your third line and he'll chip in. You can have him kill penalties and he'll do that really effectively. And from the cap perspective, I understand it, but the player itself, I mean, it seemed like a player the Sharks would want to keep. And, the one particular signing from today, I won't say which one just yet, but there's one particular signing from today that kind of reinforces that for me, where, okay, you went out and you signed this guy, or you could have just kept the one you already had.
Fair enough. Yeah. Kevin, your thoughts?
Well, Rudy Balcers, is a player that we all like. We've talked about him for years, back when he was on the Barracuda before he was traded to Ottawa and then brought back, and we were pretty happy about that. He had some success in his first season back with the Sharks, but last season he really struggled while getting more ice time. He was primarily playing top 6 minutes. He had a couple of injuries here and there, but for the most part, he was playing with Tomas Hertl and Alexander Barabanov, and then didn't do anything. And by didn't do anything, I mean he had chance after chance after chance to put the puck in the net, and it was always in the pad, in the blocker. It was always something where it was like, oh man, if he just had a little bit more, he'd have 25 goals this season with the number of chances that he was getting on the ice. And it just wasn't happening. So I don't blame the Sharks for buying him out. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't. I mean, again, we don't know what trade offers were put out there. But this is a player who was acquired by waivers to begin with. So his trade value is not going to be very high at all. And then he can't finish, basically.
Yeah.
There were players who surpassed him in the depth chart as the season went on. And again, this is a season where the Sharks struggled to put up offense. And Balcers, to me, was one of the big focal points of that. So at the $1.6 million contract per year, I believe, or salary per year, I believe he was at, that I wouldn't take that contract on for a guy who can't put up nearly as much offense for the number of chances that he gets. So, yeah, again, we like Rudy Balcers, but this is not a surprise.
Let me ask you this though: is it fair? And if you feel it is, then by all means say so. But is it fair to judge, with that kind of mindset? Because he was, as you said, he was injured twice. He did have the COVID as well. And I think with him, I think with Dahlén as well, I understand if you want to kind of reimagine the look of the middle six. I get it and I support it, but I feel like those two guys in particular have been, in my opinion, unfairly judged, where, it's almost like, how dare you not be able to score while you're injured or have the coronavirus? You know what I mean? And I don't know that that's fair.
Yeah, but the thing of it is that I don't know when Rudolfs Balcers scored his first goal of the season. But if it was early on. What's that?
It was in the first game of the season.
Was it in the first game? When did he get his second?
See, okay. When you make that point,
the thing is that he wasn't hurt the first 2 months of the season, and that was when he was playing top line minutes for the Sharks. And
it took him a month to get his second goal.
Exactly, and that's right. Things are off the rails already if your top line left wing is putting up that kind of non-offense. And then from there it took him 2 months to get goals 3, 4, and 5. Right. So
I get what you're saying.
The one thing, and I guess we can transition this into Jonathan Dahlén if you'd like, Jerk,
for sure.
Because
you can.
We
can hit those at the same time.
Balcers, despite having the no power play time, which made no sense at all, especially again if Bugner is putting Balcers out on the first line, you would think he'd also get top power play minutes, and he got none.
Right. Lane Peterson needed those minutes.
For an all-offense, not very defensive forward, that's a little perplexing. But, Balcers still did get the opportunities that Jonathan Dahlén was starting to lose that second half of the season. So the injuries could come into play here with Balcers, but he was still getting quality chances until those last couple of months when I think he just really fell out of favor with Bugner, as did a lot of the Sharks forward group.
Mm-hmm. Well, and okay, you've convinced me where, okay, maybe Balcers, maybe it's time to move on. You buy him out, or and who's to say, for all we know, the Sharks could have traded him and the return wouldn't have been awesome, and that's why they did buy him out. But you mentioned Jonathan Dahlén, and I think if anybody has been unfairly judged, it is Jonathan Dahlén. And, I budged on Balcers for you, Kevin. I'm not going to budge on this one.
I know. I think this is going to be our biggest source of contention here, and that's fine.
The only reason I say that is because for Dahlén, the goal scoring dried up the minute he hurt his shoulder. And then,
which is true.
Yeah,
right.
Actually, the goal scoring dried out the moment I finally put a tweet out on December 9th and said, hey, maybe this kid's got it after all.
Right. But, he has that hot start. I believe it was 7 goals in 15 games, injures the shoulder, comes back, gets COVID, comes back, gets a concussion, comes back. It's like, if people want to say, well, he was useless in the second half of the season, I'll agree with you on that point, but I don't think enough people are digging into the why.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I'm excited for him to go to Tampa Bay and win a cup, but continue.
I think it's fair, but my only thing with Dahlén is he changed how he played after the injuries, and I think that's why the scoring dried up. Now, his deployment also suffered there. Bugner was reluctant to put him out in any situation, and I think Dahlén, coming off a couple of pretty significant injuries, the shoulder, the head, probably was a little gun shy to go into the hard areas like he was. When Dahlén was putting up offense, he was driving. I kept saying the first quarter of the season, why doesn't Kevin Labanc ever drive the net? Why does he always play perimeter? At least Dahlén always goes to the net. Then Dahlén stopped going to the net. He became a perimeter player, and that's when things fell off the road there for him. No.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, for both of them, I really like Rudy Balcers, but
we all do.
I know.
Yeah. Hey,
I just think like I hope he catches on somewhere else. I hope another team gives him a look. I don't know if he's going to be a guy who immediately walks onto an NHL roster. He might be a guy that might have to, go to the A for a bit and then kind of wait for his opportunity. But I think with him and Dahlén, I think the one thing when you look at some of the players like Jonathan Dahlén, why didn't they trade these guys? I look at some of the guys that didn't get qualifying offers.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think the market was there for either of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dominic Kubalik didn't get a qualifying offer, and he scored 30 goals 2 years ago.
Right. Like, I just don't think there was a market. So, I mean, I understand, like, people being frustrated with the Sharks, and we'll get on, and as we get on here, I'm sure there'll be levels of frustration on the show, but I'm skeptical that there was a market for either player.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to get you anything more than, like, oh, I will give you a 7th. I mean, unless you're Max Pacioretty, then you get future considerations.
Jesus, yeah.
Now, this is going to be the going theme here, is that I don't think any of us are particularly happy that such and such player is gone. Like, I've been on the train for 4 years now, about trade Brent Burns. What are we doing? Let's trade Brent Burns. Yeah. Doesn't mean I'm happy the Sharks traded Brent Burns. I like Brent Burns. But
me too.
I like Rudy Balcers, and I at one time liked Jonathan Dahlén. Like, I just think that some of these moves are essential to moving forward. We got to move the old guard out and get the new guard in.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll get, and obviously we're going to get into it. I mean, you should, for those of you listening, you should see our rundown. It's very thick tonight.
Thick. We're going to be here all night.
But
for those of you who are wondering why we didn't lead off with Brent Burns, by the way, it's because Ian and AJ earlier today on Tealtown USA had a full-length discussion about Brent Burns, and we are going to talk about Brent Burns, but that's a show you're definitely going to want to watch because there were a lot of great points brought up by AJ and Ian.
Mm-hmm,
so.
Totally. I think with this, and I was talking about this. I talked a lot about this with. We have like a group DM of all of us. I know it came up. I talked about it with Ryan. I talked about it with Mark. If Greer were to come out and say, "Hey, this is the beginning of our rebuild," then full send. Put the pedal to the floor and let's go. But if he comes out and says, the mantra that has been the last year of, we still want to try and make the playoffs, I'm not buying it based on what happened today. No. And I think what Kevin was alluding to earlier is that he maybe for the most part kind of supports what happened today, and I think he was thinking that I was gonna come on here and just yell and scream and flip the tables. But
yes, that's exactly what happened. I thought we were gonna get angry jerk.
But you know what? And I've kind of grown this way as the Sharks have been a bad team, but I don't necessarily look at the move. I more so look at, the reason for the move. Like, are we doing this because it's the beginning of the rebuild, or are we doing this because we think we can make the playoffs? And when I say we, obviously not us, the Sharks. Right. But again, if they came out
we are
and
state
said,
media, so we are a part of the
of
the Sharks.
Many people are saying. If they, like I said, if they come out and say this is the beginning of our rebuild, then I like everything that was done because these are not moves that make you a better team. But if they come out and say, well, we think we're right there, then I'm sorry to say you need to put the glass of Kool-Aid down and readjust your thinking.
I don't like this we're going to get into more stuff here, obviously. I don't like this. If you tell me we're rebuilding, I'm not sure I'm happy.
Okay, tell me why.
Because because like some of the contract lengths and the return for Burns was meh.
Sure.
Right? Like,
that's fair.
If you tell me we're rebuilding, like where's my top prospects? Where's my draft picks?
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. Okay, so let's move on to do you guys want to do the trade first or the signings? Let's do the trade.
Let's do the trade.
Yeah.
Let's get to this.
Okay.
That's where I thought we were going to start, but
yeah, my notes are all over the place as always. All right. So obviously, again, we did talk about this earlier. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on here, but I think it's important because it kind of just looks at the big picture of where the Sharks are at right now, which is where I'd like to bring this conversation. The Carolina Hurricanes get Brent Burns and the Sharks retaining 34% of his salary. And Lane Peterson, the Sharks get a 2023 third-round pick, which is the worst of the 2 picks that the Keats possess. Right wing Steven Lorentz, and goalie Itu Makiniemi. Yeah, I mean, I was just whelmed. And again, I'm not going to get too far into the weeds here because I said a bunch of stuff earlier. I'm going to let you guys really have your say here. Who wants to start?
Well, for me, with the Brent Burns trade, obviously it is a long time coming, in my opinion, but still very sad. I definitely recommend that you check out the video that he put out a few hours ago. Or for those of you watching or listening on replay, it would have been on Wednesday afternoon. But yeah, really, he's become Mr. Shark because Marlowe's gone, Thornton's gone, Pavelski's gone. So he became the default Mr. Shark. And, he's the player who with the most marketability. He's got the beard. He's got no teeth. He's brings a lot of offense. But I think what's that?
Fan favorite.
Fan favorite, absolutely. I mean, you see him all around town when he's here and not in Texas, and how can you not love that guy? At least personality wise, and for the most part, we liked how he played, despite the number of complaints we had about maybe individual games, individual plays. He drove me nuts defensively in the D zone, especially the last couple of years. But still, overall, you got to say he was a great Shark. I know that I think it was you guys on today's show said he's still an all-time great Sharks defenseman.
Oh yeah,
and it's sad to see him go. The return is very meh. You get a goaltender who I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't say it, because I said it repeatedly about Alexei Melnichuk. Itu Makiniemi had really, really solid numbers on the best team in the AHL last year. Was it because he was a really good goalie, or was it because he had a really good team? We're going to find out. At least the Barracuda now have a goalie to pair with Strauss-Mann, and both goalies have some upside to maybe one day become NHLers. Still, with the amount of goalie prospects that the team has, it's like it's a short-term solution, because if Makiniemi doesn't work out, he just goes back to Finland, I think. So the third-round pick is really where it lies, and it's like, wow, Burns for a third-round pick. How the mighty have fallen. I want to put this out there right now to you guys in case you're not happy with it, because just a week ago we were hearing, why are the Sharks trading a third-round pick? Next year's a deep draft. That's like a second-round pick. And now a week later, the narrative has changed, and it's only a third pound.
The worst of the two.
What a shitty return.
But it's the worst of the two. That's what gets in my.
Well, that part was pretty funny. It is the worst of the two picks from Carolina.
Well, and it's worth mentioning too, and this is a bit newer news, so maybe not everybody is caught up to it. But guys, the Sharks are off the hook for worst trade of the day.
That's true. We're gonna get
and we'll get into it much later. But that is worth saying as well. Where it's. I don't know. Kevin, did you have more thoughts?
I got to hit the super chat here quick.
With that trade right there, it shows just how valuable cap space is. And that is the biggest weapon that Mike Grier has. Whether he's using it this year to its full efficiency, he probably isn't. Again, this team's rebuilding. Who cares how he's using the cap space this year?
Because he's signing fourth liners to 4-year deals.
Yeah. Boston traded Joe Thornton back in 2006 to get cap space so that their new GM, Peter Chiarelli, hopefully Mike Grier is not Peter Chiarelli, because that's Ian's favorite GM.
Sure.
But they eventually used that cap space down the road, and guess what? They won a Stanley Cup by moving on from Joe Thornton. So let Mike Grier do his job. Let him move some pieces out, bring in the cap space, and let's see how he weaponizes it in a couple of
Just
years.
quick in the super chat here, Skylar. Thank you very much. The best part is Carolina is the home opener opponent. Yeah, that's spicy. I like that. Again, like the chat is super hot tonight, and I'm gonna try and get to the chat as much as I can. But we have like so much to get through, and I do have to be up early tomorrow. So if I'm not, don't feel crappy if I'm not grabbing your comments or anything else. It's just there's a lot to get through, and we'd like to do it at some point tonight. Although I did put in the Discord, I think that this podcast is gonna last like 82 years or something. So. So just that.
Sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna jump in here quick, and I think the one thing about the cap space, right, was like that was the key to the deal. The Sharks had to start moving off from people in their core, and I think there are people that I'm sure people would love to move on from, but those people were never in the cards. So they had to move someone. Like Brent Burns is a guy that I've been saying trade for a while now as well, because I thought he made the most sense. He's a guy who I thought would probably get a better return than this for sure. But at the same time, like he is a 37-year-old defenseman making $8 million a year. Right. So I kind of like you. I'm glad that. This could have been a lot worse. Like the Sharks, to try not to like retain less salary. Like God, they could have thrown in something that would probably make our heads spin.
Or given him away for free.
Or given a guy away for free, right? And that didn't happen.
I was expecting it to be Burns and LeBanc, or Burns and Gushchin, or even Burns and Robbins for something. I thought for sure they would have to couple him.
Oh, could you imagine the salary they'd have to eat if they sent Burns and LeBanc?
Jeez.
Anyway, go ahead, Jerk. I don't.
Yeah, you know what? I think as you guys talked about, the cap space gained here. That's the biggest asset of the trade. Of course, we'll get into what the cap space was used for. But the cap space is the biggest asset here. I think, it is kind of unfortunate the Sharks did trade away the best player in the deal, Lane Peterson, but we'll move on. The third round pick in 2023, to Kevin's point, it is a deep draft. I would have liked that to have been at least a second, just to say that
absolutely,
just to say that you have multiple second round picks
based on retention too.
Right, based on the salary retention as well. I was thinking no more than $2 million, and it ended up being 2 3/4. But you still get a draft or a draft pick, a lottery ticket, so to speak, out of it. And the goalie prospect, it's to Kevin's point. We'll see if he is a product of his team or if his team is a product of him. But I think at the very least, it's an intriguing prospect to take a chance on. And for Steven Lorentz, he's a fringe guy for me. And that's kind of all I have to say. It's not the best return by any means. I think if the Sharks had traded him a year ago, this return would be significantly better. But it's still the right move to make. It's the right time, the right move, the right destination. And, we're going to get way more into this, in this show and down the road as well. But the immediate question that came to my mind after moving Burns is, how do you not move to say, okay, next in line to be traded, number 39, you're up. Like, how do you just not steer completely into it at this point?
I think that's fair. I think there are more moves to come, not just LeBanc, but beyond that. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question to bring up.
I don't see. The problem with moving a center is then you need a center, and How
dare you disparage second line Thomas Bordelot?
Maybe that's the play, but that's a big gamble. Like
totally, I get you.
I feel like Couture is more of a sure thing there. Like, I don't mind if Thomas Bordelot can kick Logan Couture out of his spot. Great, I'm all about guys kicking other guys out of spots. That's what you want. I just don't want guys to be just handed stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned that with the goaltending earlier today about Aiden Hill or James Reimer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same principle, right? Like if Kaapo Kakonen's the guy going forward, he has to take the net from James Reimer. like I think the one thing that you got to be careful with when you do a rebuild, and I'm not sold that we're in a rebuild. I think we're definitely, everything looks very rebuildy, but there's still a lot of shoes that have to fall. Like, I would rather see guys take spots rather than just be given them. Like, look what happened at Edmonton before, when it was like the first wave of the rebuild. Taylor Hall, Jordan Eberle, all those guys were just given spots. Right? I want guys to earn spots.
Yeah. Look at Johnny Brodzinski a couple of years ago with the Sharks, where he was, he's the best of the guys who were okay in training camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just some breaking news here. I guess Rudolfs Balcers has signed with the Florida Panthers. Skylar coming with the super chat. It was also AJ in the chat kind of brought it up sooner. So it looks like Rudolfs Balcers has caught on with the Florida Panthers. So that's faster than I thought he was going to catch on with another team.
Not the Florida team I was thinking. I'll tell you that.
Well, there you go. Well, there's still Jonathan Dahlén for Tampa.
Yeah, I think that's a good signing. I mean, the analytics are there, and Florida, as we know, they've lost a handful of players. Coming into this offseason, I think it'll be a good fit for them.
Yeah.
What I wanted to wrap up with Brent Burns stuff here is there was chatter that I heard personally, and then I think you mentioned Jeff Merrick also said the same thing, which was that Dallas was in the hunt, as I think we all expected, for Brent Burns. The information that I received was that Dallas gave a really piss-poor offer because they knew Burns has his ties to Dallas. Pavelski is there. His former coach is there. His house is there. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's there.
Yeah.
So Dallas had all the leverage and tried to use it. And Mike Grier at least said, nah, I've got some other options here. So good on him for that. But do you think if the Sharks didn't hum and haw over who their GM was going to be, which, again, to my understanding, Mike Grier's been known, despite what the Sharks publicly have said, Mike Grier has been known to be the Sharks GM for at least 4 weeks now? Do you think if he was in that spot and chatting with other teams a lot sooner, does that return for Brent Burns get that much sweeter? Or do you think the Sharks still end up with what they got today with McIniemi a third and then basically a swap of Lawrence and Peterson? Because that's all it really is.
See, and I don't know. Maybe, but I think, I think some of like the return and stuff is just like welcome to the GM ranks.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
Right. Like I think some of it's just taking a little bit of advantage of a GM of a brand new GM, first time GM in an awful situation.
Well, not only that, but regardless of whether Mike Grier has been the GM for 4 hours, 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 whatever, Brent Burns is still a 37-year-old defenseman making $8 million that has declined over the last 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. And I kind of, as I said that, I kind of thought of my own counterpoint, which is Mike Grier wasn't under the gun to get the Brent Burns trade done today.
No, he
didn't have to.
I mean, he theoretically had until the opening of training camp.
Right.
So I think...
Although I think with a guy like Brent Burns with that kind of money, you don't want to wait too long because obviously you don't want guys like to fill needs elsewhere. And
sure, but I agree with that. I think that's a good point. But at the same time, I think the fact that, to Kevin's point, how there was no pressure to move Burns today and yet he still went, it makes me think Grier was probably thinking that he was never going to get a better deal for Burns than this one, and so just took advantage.
Yeah, you'd hope. Yeah,
I think that's definitely a possibility. All right, so let's move on. I'm gonna just kind of rapid fire through these signings, or do you guys want to get anything in on these signings? Well, let's do the big one first. The big one, quote unquote. The Sharks picked up Oskar Lindblom, 25-year-old
Kevin's favorite
left
player.
wing. 2 years, 2.5 million AAV. He was previously on the Flyers. He was bought out. He was scheduled to make, I think, $3 million this year. In 79 games played, scored 12 goals, 14 assists, 26 points, 22 penalty minutes, and was a -11, which really isn't that bad when you consider how horribly inept the Flyers were at playing defense.
Yeah, I mean, 2 separate 10-game losing streaks last year. So to get out of that with only a -11 is pretty impressive. I think, as I mentioned before, he is Kevin's favorite player, and the reason why I say that is because the first time I had ever heard of this player was from Kevin. Kevin is the person I think I've heard speak about this player the most. So A plus B equals C. This is Kevin's favorite player.
So the B stands for Brenus,
yes,
the team he played for.
There you go.
Sweden.
See, it all loops back around. No, you know what? In a vacuum, I like the player.
Mm-hmm.
Good player, can put up the offense. As we know, he's gone through some very major health issues the last couple of years that he's hopefully put behind him completely. He's scores at a decent clip, all things considered. I like the player. But is this not Rudolfs Balcers at $1 million more?
Yeah.
That was what I was alluding to earlier.
I don't think he's worse than Rudolfs Balcers or Jonathan Dahlén.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is going to be the big telling point, is can he be better to justify that he's going to be making more money? You just bought Rudy Balcers out at 1.6 or 1.5 or whatever, and now you're giving Lindblom, a comparable player, more. I think Lindblom has more to his game than just offense. Part of the reason why I think he didn't have better offensive numbers is because he was playing third and fourth line, primarily fourth line minutes with the Flyers this season and in a defensive role.
Mm-hmm.
I made the argument to people earlier today about you had Balcers playing with Hertl, putting up the same number of points as Lindblom playing with Scott Laughton.
Right.
You'd think Hertl would help Balcers produce 20 more points than he did the role that he was given.
Really good point, actually. And worth mentioning as well, Lindblom has not played a full season. He almost got to a full season this year, but, last year, 2 years ago, he did not play a full season. And he, in his first real rookie year, he scored 17 goals, something that Rudolfs Balcers has never done.
Yes. I believe, if my stats are correct, I think Lindblom had 11 goals in 30 games in the year that he was diagnosed with cancer.
That is accurate. Yeah, 11 goals in 30 games. That is correct.
So,
not bad.
I mean, he before cancer and the health issues and everything like that, he was on his way to becoming a 20-plus goal scorer in the NHL.
Oh yeah.
So you hope that he can get back to that. The Sharks obviously are showing faith that he can get back to that. I think at worst, he's Balcers and Dahlén all over again and more expensive. But the Sharks obviously willing to roll the dice and trust that he will thrive. I've just been waiting for him to get out of Philadelphia, and I'm so happy it finally happened.
And based on your kind of explanation, I do see where you're going for. I think the positive is that at worst he's Rudolfs Balcers.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. As we talked about, we love Balcers. So that's not bad. And to Kevin's point, Balcers spent most of the year, he was with Bordelot and Gregor towards the end of the year, as we know, but he spent most of the year with Hertl and Meyer, or Hertl and Barabanov, as Kevin mentioned. Meanwhile, Lindblom, Laughton and JVR, Laughton and Konechny, good player, down year. Giroux and Atkinson. So you think I'd be curious to know how many games he played with Giroux and Atkinson. But to your point, Kevin, he wasn't playing with the players that Rudolfs Balcers was playing with, and so the fact that their numbers are pretty comparable, I think you're convincing me yet again to maybe mellow out a little bit.
And that was the frustrating thing. That was the frustrating thing for me because, as you mentioned, Oskar Lindblom is not my favorite player. Let's get that straight.
Are you sure?
I have been keeping tabs on him because he's a player I do really like, and so I would see him get put on a line with Giroux, and he'd put up a goal. And then the very next game, it's like the Bob Bugner thing all over again. The next game, he's back down on the fourth line. It's like, keep him in the top six. He's showing he can produce when you actually put him there.
Well, and to your point, Kevin,
the Flyers.
The games he did play, when he was with Giroux and Atkinson, 5 of his 12 goals this year were with Giroux and Atkinson.
Yeah. There you go. Like.
All right, Kevin, you convinced me. Your favorite player is worth staying.
I don't like I like the move. I think I said earlier today I think this is a guy who might be able to sneak up into the top 6, right? And play on like the second line role. But I think he's responsible enough defensively that you could put him on maybe not on this team, but a scoring third line.
Yeah.
Right? So I think I like the signing. I think he's a good player. Hell of a story, good player. I think it's
totally
brutal that he was bought out in Philadelphia to make room for Tony DeAngelo. So
I did hear though that the Flyers did donate $100,000 to Lindblom's charity of choice though in the buyout.
I mean that's nice, but still.
Oh no, I know. I'm just saying.
It almost kind of feels like he may have something to prove based on that fact.
Yeah, I'm curious. And again, there's a lot of things that we don't know yet, right? Like again, I don't know who's coaching this team next year. I mean, the coaching staff at both levels right now is John McCarthy. That's it.
I mean, some people would say that the Sharks signed another version of John McCarthy today, but just saying.
Yeah. Okay. Next signing, the Sharks signed centerman Nico Sturm, 27, 3 years, $2 million AAV. Just got off winning a cup with Colorado this year. 74 games played, 9 goals, 11 assists, 20 points, 14 and a -7 on Colorado. Again, I like the player. I like the signing in a bubble. But when you kind of start putting all these pieces that have happened today together, I don't like what this puzzle piece is making. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think, again, I'm with you. Just on its own, I think good player, fourth line player, obviously on the Stanley Cup team, very reliable guy. He's a lot better option than I think Lane Peterson was giving. He's a lot better option than what Jasper Weatherby was giving. I do question why the Sharks wouldn't have just rolled with Scott Reedy, who played pretty good in that role last year. But with Nico Sturm, I like the player, but at 3 years for a fourth line center. And that's not even considering the fact that you have Scott Reedy in the pipeline. You have Nick Bonino under contract for another year. You have a Jasper Weatherby who a lot of people are really into. You have a Sasha Chmelevski who's trying to make the NHL.
Who you qualified.
That too. I again, on its own, I don't hate the signing, but given where the Sharks are at, what they're doing, what they need, it's a little confusing to me.
Yeah, and just in the chat here, a lot of people are saying it doesn't matter who the coach is or whatever, but I'm not saying I need to know the coach because I need to know if this team's going to be good or not, but based on a coach, you can kind of speculate on how you're going to deploy all these players that you just signed, right? And I think without knowing the coach, it's hard to say, okay, is this guy a second line guy? Is he a third line guy? Is he going to play on the fourth line? Is he on the Barracuda? There's a lot of question marks that not knowing the coach and having that kind of to try and model what the expectations are for where these guys are going to play. That's what I mean by it's hard to say without a coach. Kevin.
The only thing I really have to add, because I think you guys pretty much nailed it. I like Nico Sturm, and I think he has a little bit of untapped upside. he was a top college player when he was signed by the Wild, and which should tell you right there that way too much is made out of college free agency. But because the Sharks also have Max Verino, who we haven't even mentioned and probably won't mention again the rest of the year. But the only thing I can think of is the Sharks are doing what they did last year, trying to bring in everyone they can for the fourth line to create competition so that you have to earn your spot onto the fourth line, as Ian said earlier, or onto the third line or whatever. But yeah, like to the reaction that Ian just had right there, like they're, it's just they're guys from the Guy Factory,
right?
And Nico Sturm, I like Nico Sturm. He will be on the Sharks this season. Like, he's definitely not a player who will be seeing on the Barracuda. But there are a litany of other players who could go down, could go up. But like Scott Reedy, Sasha Chmelevski, like, do they really need to be in the AHL? They need to get some NHL minutes. So I think more moves are coming. Maybe Matt Nieto goes.
I think he has to.
Like to see Nick. I would like to see Nick Bonino stay, but I don't know. I mean, they qualified Gadjevich, which shocked me.
Right.
And I guess that means Jeff VL goes to the minors, and then it's, there's a lot of question marks there created by this signing.
I tweeted out earlier, and it was kind of in jest because I'm pretty snarky and sarcastic, and I said it, I do like the symmetry of having one first line and three third lines.
That was funny.
So the next Sharks made a couple of other signings here. They signed defenseman Marcus Nutavara. Yes. 28 years old, 1 year, 1.5 million AAV. Last I checked, unless it's changed. Previously a member of the Florida Panthers, only played one game last year, I think. The year before, though, he played 30 games with 10 assists, 10 points, 12 penalty minutes, and was a +1 on the Florida Panthers. Kevin, is this a Shark or a Barracuda?
No, this is a Shark, absolutely. I like Marcus Nutavara. My best comparison that I could make is he's Diet Brendan Dillon.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's not as physical as Brendan Dillon, so he's like somewhere in between Dillon and DeMello. That was weirdly said, but he's pretty good defensive defenseman. Definitely. Much better than Frederick Claesson from a couple of years ago, for example. Much better than him. Like, I like the Nutavara signing. I think this one makes sense. Again, he's got something to prove because it was the timing of his injury was really disappointing because he was starting to build an NHL foundation to his game. He played very well for Columbus in the bubble playoffs against Tampa Bay a couple years ago. Right, Tampa Bay? Yeah, Tampa Bay. But then he just kind of started to lose his game, and that's why he became a free agent. And I'm happy with this signing. Jerk, what say you?
Well, and of the three that sort of all came out at once, Sturm, Nutavara, and Benning, which we're obviously going to get to, and I think we all know how we feel about that one. The Nutavara one was the most intriguing to me, Kevin. Like you said, those years in Columbus was really, really good. I mean, 20 points as kind of like a bottom pairing defenseman, maybe got, a little bit of, second power play unit time, but mostly was used even strength. I was quite impressed with him at the time. I was surprised to see him get traded back in the day, back in the day 2 years ago, to the Florida Panthers. And, to Ian's point, only one game this year, had one assist. So, he's batting 1,000. But his last, I don't want to say full season, but his last season where he consistently played games, 10 assists in 30 games. Again, as a bottom pairing defenseman, not getting any power play time. I mean, it's decent. It's impressive. And it as I said, it's interesting. It's intriguing. It makes you wonder. I definitely think he's an upgrade over Radim Šimić. I think he's an upgrade over Nick Milosh, over Magna. It's really unfortunate that of these three signings that sort of came in a batch together, the one that I'm most excited for is the shortest one.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely intrigued. I would like to see, what does he do on a third pairing with, let's say, Vlasic or Santeri Hatakka, something like that. I'm into it. My expectations are pretty low. It's definitely a low risk signing, but I think the reward could be something interesting. And like you said, Kevin, he's somewhere in between a Brendan Dillon and a Dylan DeMello. Definitely less physical than Dillon, but blocks a lot of shots. His best year, he had a crazy amount of takeaways for how much he was on the ice.
Yeah.
So I'm into it. I'm down with it. It's not the sexy signing, but I think it's a good signing.
The only thing, and perfectly said there. The only thing with Nudavara is I don't think this is a defenseman who you can expect to maybe jump up to a second pair. The way Lindblom could probably jump up into the second line forward position. And by the way, Lindblom can play both wings. Just want to throw that out there. But Nudavara, I find it interesting. You got Hatakka coming. You got Kakkonen there. You got Makiniemi. The Sharks are starting to build a little bit of a Finnish contingent on the back end. So, Suomi.
Are you thinking
gold medal Suomi?
Are you think we're gonna rip off Mike Greer's mask and find out it was Jarmo Kekalainen the whole time?
It's me all along.
The last signing here, the Sharks did some other things too. Like I think they re-upped Jacob Magna, which is fine. The last one here, Sharks signed Matt Benning, 28, 4 years, $1.25 million. Why?
Seventh defenseman
of the Nashville Predators, 65 games played, not 65 goals. Jesus, 0 goals, 11 assists, 11 points, 39 penalty minutes, a -24 on the Nashville Predators. I mean,
seventh defenseman.
I don't get the term here. And I think Matt Benning's a guy who's probably not playing for the Barracuda. Like the Barracuda have holes on their blue line. I just don't think that Benning's a guy that was brought in to fill those.
No, I mean he's been in the NHL every year of his career.
Yeah, I think Benning is there to to replace Šimik. But if Šimik's still around, Benning might find himself on the Barracuda. They need right side defensemen there too, but I don't know. This one was the term is what's weird to me. Well, Benning is a depth guy. Has been a depth. He was put into a top 4 spot for Edmonton there when they started to get close to playoff time, and he struggled big time. Like he's just not the guy to be going out there and being anything more than a 6-7 defenseman. And
I think this
4 years.
This is your discount Brendan Dillon, I think.
Oh, this is a huge discount.
This is your liquidation sale, Brendan Dillon.
Yeah. For me, guys, with the prospects who are coming, like Hatakka is coming.
Hell yeah.
What are you going to do with Benning in a year if Hatakka is ready?
Well, Hatakka, Knyazhev. I mean, Kevin, I know that you hate Nick Cicek, but he's a guy as well. I'm just messing with you, but you make a good point, right? Where there are a handful of young defensemen who maybe they're not guaranteed NHLers, but they've got a pretty damn good chance at being that. And so you're signing Matt Benning again in a vacuum. You bring in Matt Benning as the 7th defenseman. Hey, right on, far out, dude. But for 4 years, that's I mean, unless the plan is to just eventually stash him on the Barracuda, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, you could stash it. That contract's gone.
Right, but it's just it's interesting. I'll say
that to me, that 4-year deal is almost like they're using the number pad on the keyboard, and they mistyped 1. They had 1 button above the 1, and they typed 4, and then sent it in to the NHL league offices, and then went, well.
I mean, unless it's a situation where they want to have Merkley and Hatakka start on the Barracuda to over ripen.
Jesus Christ.
I mean,
Maybe.
again, those two players, I personally believe they should be in the NHL and be getting ice time and sort of progressing their careers. But I mean, if next season is going to be a total gong show, I don't hate the idea of them being away from it either.
No, Merkley's got to be.
Yeah.
Like, Merkley's time in the NHL is over. He has to be in the NHL at this point. If he's not,
Well, with
then you
Burns
should
gone,
trade him.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, with
you
Burns
have
gone,
to
yeah.
trade him.
I think Merkley still has something to prove in the AHL, but yeah, with the way the roster is built, just put him in the NHL at this point. And after January 1st, Merkley did play a lot better at both
correct.
levels, both the AHL and the NHL. So he's starting to course correct and get on the right path here. So I think having him in the NHL this next season is going to be good for him, unless the team is just god awful and he's suddenly a minus 30 by the trade deadline.
I don't think it matters. How long? Like, how long do you leave a first round? Like, I know it's a late first round pick, but like at some point, like Merkley, this has to be Merkley's season. He has to put it together this year. Brent Burns' vacancy puts the spotlight, in my opinion, directly on Ryan Merkley.
I agree.
Because he's going to be the guy that's going to play, like, he's going to be the offensive defenseman that's going to play the most games this year.
Yep. I like what you did there. No, I agree. I think the power play too is his to lose. I agree with you, Ian. I think, I was kind of hoping, in a head in the clouds kind of situation. I was hoping that the Sharks were going to sniff around somebody like Ryan McDonagh. I think Ryan McDonagh would have been a perfect D partner for Ryan Merkley. So that I was kind of crossing my fingers for that one. But even, I believe that Merkley had some success, limited success, but some success with Vlasic. And so maybe that's the play. Vlasic keeps talking about how rejuvenated he is. Maybe you just say, okay, buddy, you're rejuvenated. Show us. Play with Merkley. Middle pairing. I think the top pairing is going to be Ferraro Carlson. I don't think any of us disagree there. So get Merkley in a top four role, as you said, Kevin. See what he can do, but also with Vlasic. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse here a little bit. But see if you have a rejuvenated Vlasic as well.
Yeah. I think so. I think my question, and obviously, look there's way more things that have to happen here. Like, do I think Mike Greer's done? No, I think there's more things coming, but there's definitely a couple things that like I have serious question marks around as far as players go. Like, I'm not sure what the plan with Šimek is, because I feel like Šimek's a guy that Mike Greer should like.
Right.
But is he in the plans? I don't know. Where's Nick Bonino in all this? Where's Matt Nieto in all this?
And like Matt just said in the chat, without a coach, who knows?
Exactly.
And I think that really does apply to Šimek in the situation. Šimek's just never been the same player since his knee injuries, and I don't know if he can ever get back. And the thing of it is that Šimek just kind of suddenly got to the Sharks. Like, he improved so much over one off season that he just showed up with the Sharks. So he was never all that consistent before that. So that's what makes that contract look so bad. And you just wonder if the Sharks at this point ride it out the way they've been riding out Vlasic and just hope that, something sparks again.
Yeah.
I don't see it, but
Ricky asks, let me put it up on the board here. All these contracts are coming in a little higher than I'd like. Is this the tax the Sharks are paying for being bad right now? I don't know. I think it's the tax they're paying for the cost of living in the Bay Area.
But that's a real thing, especially at the AHL level. Like, players do get paid more here because of the offset of the cost of living.
Yeah. I guess my other question here too is does Mike Greer just, now that Doug Wilson Jr.'s out the door, does Mike Greer just hate everything Doug Wilson Jr.'s done? Like, I'm curious to see where a guy like Bordeleau fits in, where a guy like Eklund fits in. Right? Kevin, you put out a good tweet about the Barracuda earlier, which I'd like you to kind of just highlight what you're saying there, because I feel like a lot of guys, like I don't think there's, with all these signings that we've seen so far, and it's like some of the guys that are still in the weeds here, like the Nietos, I don't know where these openings are.
Yeah, most of the openings seem to be with the Barracuda right now. Just kind of the overflow, which isn't bad for the Barracuda, who are trying to sell new season tickets at their arena and trying to bring this new group of incoming prospects forward. Like Andrew Agostino, we can just simply say that's a good AHL signing. He's a quality AHL vet. Stephen Lawrence, I actually think he's brought in to be a top-line AHLer, just the way Lane Peterson was last year. So they can provide some complementary styles to the high-octane offense that we expect the incoming prospects to become. But there's like a couple of defensive roles that are wide open on the Barracuda. There's a couple of third-line roles that are wide open. So that's where, does Viel drop down? Does Lawrence, as I mentioned, does Reedy, Chmielewski, Shimmick even go back to the Barracuda at $4 million? It's gonna be kind of weird because, and it's why I think there are a lot more moves to come on the Sharks roster to try and fit everyone in, and I think it's still gonna be growing pains. Because it's going to be like Kevin LeBanc for maybe a low player and a prospect kind of thing. Because there's just no room to bring in other bodies right now unless they are better players. And I don't know if the Sharks have the true assets to bring in better players right now.
I just think
if you did, you wouldn't move out Brent Burns today.
Right. Yeah, I want to hit something in the chat here quick. Joshua K saying moving on from Boards and Eklund would be extremely disheartening. I don't think that's in the cards. Like Eklund is a pretty across the board like
A+ prospect,
right?
Yeah.
Mike Grier is gonna love Thomas Bordeleau. Yeah, Thomas Bordeleau isn't 6'4", but that dude is so tenacious on the puck. Like Mike Grier is gonna love Bordeleau. There's no way he doesn't. So I don't worry about those guys just getting dumped. I mean, if they did, I will come on here and I will scream profanities for an hour. I promise.
But I like what you were saying, Ian, and I'm sorry we kind of cut you off, Jerk.
Sorry, Jerk.
But I like what you were saying, Ian, because I think it's all a matter of, boy, Mike Grier has offloaded a lot of management and a lot of player personnel in a week and a half.
Yeah.
So it does come into question, like, what if he does start to just completely undo what Doug Wilson Jr. brought in? Weissblatt, Robbins.
I think he'll love Weissblatt too. Weissblatt's a Mike Grier guy.
I think he will too. Actually, I think Ozzy Weissblatt will thrive more under a Mike Grier-led organization than a Doug Wilson-led organization. Jerk, what were you gonna say? Like, I feel bad that we cut you off there.
No problem. Just going back to what you said with LeBanc, I kind of feel like the way things are going, especially as you mentioned on Twitter, the holes on the Barracuda, it feels like a LeBanc trade would be for maybe
future,
like AHL depth and a draft pick. I mean, I'm kind of the belief that in a situation like that, you're better off going after a draft pick as opposed to a prospect, unless you really like the prospect, because with a draft pick you can pick your own guy, right? But I think with that, and I think if any other big names are traded, whether it's Couture or LeBanc or Shimmick, maybe, I think you're going to see that. I think if the opportunity to get a pick is there, they'll take it. But for the most part, I think you're going to see a situation where it's, maybe it's an AHL guy and then a prospect that could be something. I think, there's no situation here. The Sharks are not taking 50 spare parts for David Pastrnak. You know what I mean?
Right.
As cool as that would be, it's not happening.
No, it is not happening. I think kind of just broad brush. I mean, obviously we've had a lot of moves, and I think things had to change, and I know there's going to be pain. Like I don't think any of us are sitting here thinking, oh man, Mike Grier was going to come in and everything was going to be awesome. The problem I have is I just don't feel like there hasn't been a move so far where I'm like, fuck yeah, we rock that shit.
Sure.
Right? Like,
well,
it's all
sure.
been just,
yeah.
I've just been whelmed.
And
maybe a little underwhelmed.
And it's funny because the two, for me anyway, the moves that Mike Grier has made where I've been psyched about it's ended up, the backside of it has been not so great. The point I've made before is, trading 11th overall for 27, 34, and 45. I think that was an awesome trade. Huge trade. And then you look at who the Sharks took at those positions, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm some expert. Obviously, these two and Mark would know a lot more than I do, but I'm friends with those guys. They fill me in.
It's true.
And, by all accounts, it doesn't really seem like the Sharks swung for the fences on those 3 picks. And so that was an awesome move that's kind of had some dirt kicked on it as well. Aside from that, though, I'm with you, Ian. At best, everything has just been very shoulder shrug. Just, okay.
And here's the thing, too. Kevin, do you want to get in here?
And that's, I just wanted to say, and that's all a part of the process. We don't know where the ultimate direction is. I mean, this team could just completely spiral out of control. We don't know. We have a rookie GM who doesn't have a track record yet. But I think right now we have to try and trust the process, and that's why I'm comfortable with what's happening because I don't know where things are going, and I'm just on for the ride.
Here's the thing that confuses me, though. Like, you moved all that space with Brent Burns to get cap space, but then you used so much of it on just depth guys, and there's like you said, there's lots of stuff that still has to happen, but you've basically used all that cap space. Kakanen's not signed, Ferraro's not signed, Timo Meier needs a deal this summer. Like, I'm a little bit concerned about the future of Timo Meier on this team.
The Timo Meier one.
I hate that I agree with you.
Right.
Because you're right. I mean, because Timo Meier is 25. If you're trading Timo Meier, this is a 5-year teardown. Let's be real here.
I don't know why the Sharks would trade Timo Meier, not just from the talent sense, but Mike Grier is trying to build this team toughness. I know someone, it was either in the chat or on Twitter earlier today, but they said, oh no, it was Brian Delfava. He said, for a number of years, we've complained about how the Sharks aren't tough. They don't stick up for one another. You see, like, Erik Karlsson get ragdolled, or you see, I'm trying to think of another player, like a smallish player, but you see players get kind of ragdolled and no one steps in and helps out on that. And Mike Grier is bringing in this toughness, bringing in more intensity. I totally lost my train of thought on that. Sorry, guys.
This is what happens on this show.
It's been a long day.
Is this podcast pro analytics or anti analytics? I think we're just analytics. I think I would never turn down information. Am I gonna sit here and ramble off a bunch of stats to you? No, because I don't know how to make that entertaining.
Drew Weber's not here anymore.
Yeah. We're definitely not anti-analytics, but I've never found a way to to give the analytical perspective without putting everyone to sleep.
I just don't know enough about analytics to be able to apply it in a positive way or just any way.
Yeah.
Right.
So
I think jumping back really quick. I think, as I said, I mean, if you're trading Timo Meier, it's a 5-year teardown. But I agree with what Kevin said. Kevin Mike Greer has said, we want players who are hard to play against. They're tough, they're fast, and all those fun things. And that's what Timo Meier is. Like, if you want to, if the marketing team for the Sharks is going to, build up their nice posters based on what Mike Greer wants the team to look like, Timo Meier is going to be on a lot of these posters. And
that's where I was going with that. Thank you for picking me up.
Yeah, no problem. And I feel like that's kind of the key to this whole thing. I mean, what happens with Timo Meier is going to tell us what the direction of the Sharks is, because, Timo Meier is a good player. He's 25 years old. If it is a long teardown, you don't want to waste his time, right?
Yeah.
And so
I wonder if Timo Meier is not in the future plans. I just wonder what would have happened when Tomas Hertl came up.
Right, exactly. But and that's the thing. And I think even Tomas Hertl, I think to a lesser degree, fits Mike Greer's mold. He's not the fastest. He's not the fastest guy by any stretch, but he is a big body. He's 6'2", 215 pounds, but he plays so much bigger. He is hard to play against, and aside from all that, he is a good player. And I think, you can have both, right? Where you totally throw a grenade on the team while also establishing who your core is and going from there. And I think, Meier and Hertl, I think those are the guys that, Mike Greer is going to continue to look for. I mean, they are skilled players, but they are hard to play against, and they do use their bodies well and effectively. And it goes so much further, though. Like, I worry about a Barabanov. I worry about a Noah Gregor. Mm-hmm. Do these guys fit this mold? And some people are saying that it's a bit of a prehistoric kind of mindset to have. But I do think the Sharks have had a habit, especially the last 3 years, the Sharks have had a habit of being pushed around a little bit. And, that's not to say that you need a lineup full of, Jeff VLs, but, you should be able to stand up for yourself and
yeah, like I understand, I understand the people that wanted this team to get tougher, but I don't know if is getting tougher meaning you have to put lineups, lines of guys on the ice like it's the 80s.
Right.
I'm not there, right? And that's I think the part of the thing that I don't understand. I think the little bit thing, I understand, okay, you want to get a little bit bigger, that's fine. But
it's also worth saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think if you can go too far in the other direction on that. I understand getting tougher to play against, but you can go too far in the other direction.
It's also worth saying, all things equal, if Mike Greer looks at this team and he thinks, that Hertl guy is not really part of the plan. Mm-hmm. Aside from the fact that he has a no move clause, that's a tradable contract, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And so if it gets to that point where he says, this Hertl guy, not really feeling it, it's a movable contract. Timo Meier, same thing. Yeah. I don't want him to be moved, but it's a movable asset. And we're not even going to talk about the qualifying offer nonsense because it's a non-issue. And these players that we're worried about, they can be moved.
Here's the thing, right? I'm seeing something in the chat. You can be as tough as you want, but if you can't score goals, you can't win hockey games.
Bingo.
That's period. That's it. You can be as tough as you want, and you can be as hard to play against as you want, but if you can't score goals, you don't win hockey games. That's it. I don't know. All right. Go ahead.
Like a Tiger in the chat mentioned, Hertl must be regretting his decision to re-sign with the Sharks. See, I don't think so. Now, Timo Meier was traded, then I think he would be. But I think Hertl full well knew what was going on with the plan over the next few years. I said it at the time that he was signed to the contract extension. The Sharks have 3 years to turn this around. If they haven't turned this around by 3 years, which is when Hertl's no movement clause ends, at that point, the Sharks can look into a possibility of moving him, because clearly something went wrong and they need to go a completely different direction anyway. So I think Hertl's fine with his
all right,
decision.
so I figured what I would do is I'd go around the division a little bit, just kind of, we don't have to go super deep into any of this. I think we're going to do for those that have not watched the Teal Tinted Glasses before, like, we generally do talk about other teams. We have a series that we do every summer called Know Your Enemy, when we kind of start laying out the preview for all the divisional teams. So there's going to be 8 shows dedicated to 7, I guess, because the Sharks are a team in the division, I suppose. So there'll be 7 shows dedicated to each of these things, where we're going to take a much deeper dive. But I figured let's obviously we can start with Edmonton. I figure Edmonton's the one thing, right? Edmonton signs goaltender Jack Campbell, 5 years, $5 million AAV. It's a little rich for my blood for Jack Campbell. They re-signed Brett Kulak by 2.75, and of course they bring back Evander Kane, 4 years, $5.125 million. Edmonton Oilers.
I think of all the divisional opponents for the Sharks that made moves today, I think Edmonton has, by and large, been the most successful at building their team for next season. I mean, I was very critical of the Brett Kulak trade when it came down. I kind of thought giving up a second round pick for him was a bit rich. He ended up playing extremely well for them, and so good on them for recognizing the talent and bringing him back, but also at such a low number. Like, it's not, that contract won't kill them. They can trade it if it's bad, and if it's good, then they've got awesome value. You know, Evander Kane, he played well for them. He still sucks as a person.
Hey, Evander Kane still has 2 more years before they will be begging anyone to take the remaining 2 years.
And Jack Campbell, I agree with you, Ian. The contract is a bit rich. I don't have a problem with the AAV. It's the years that I'm a bit nervous about. Yeah. If it was a 3 years times $5 million, I'd be okay with that. Even if it was a 3 years times $6 million, I think I'd be fine. But it's the years for me that are messing up.
Yeah, I mean, they had to do something in goal. I think the one thing that I keep going back to is our conversation we had about James Reimer on our goalie pyramid show, which you can go back and watch. Really fun show that we did, and we had a nice conversation about James Reimer. And I might have to concede Hockey Jerk's probably right, because you seem like all these opportunities where you think James Reimer should land, and he just never seems to go anywhere. Not that I think he should go anywhere, but you know what I mean?
I still think, and I've said it a while, I like to stick to my guns. I still think James Reimer is a trade deadline tradable
I agree.
asset.
Yeah.
I don't see any reason that the Sharks need to trade him right now, unless you think that James Reimer.
I think if someone blows the doors off, blows your doors off for James Reimer, you probably have to consider it.
Sure, but I don't think anyone's going to do that. Like, I think that's a pipe dream. So I think Reimer is going to fetch you just as much value in February as he is right now. So I to me, if Edmonton wants to go and acquire James Reimer to back up Jack Campbell going into the playoffs, I think that makes a lot of sense. Because you guys know that I'm not the biggest Stuart Skinner fan, and I'm not even a big Jack Campbell fan either. But I do understand this move that the Oilers made today. They did need to improve on their goaltending, and especially get younger from Mike Smith there. So the moves they made are fine, and I don't see a problem.
Well, and I think to your point, Kevin, like, the Sharks could trade James Reimer right now, and maybe they'll get a 3rd-round pick for him, and it's going to be awesome. But why wouldn't you just wait till the trade deadline, when a team inevitably has a goalie that gets hurt, or maybe they are playing dodgeball on the ice, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, if we don't pay a second for James Reimer, we're going to lose the Stanley Cup. It's at this point, the Sharks need to be taking advantage of other teams that get desperate.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And here's the thing, to spin it back with the Sharks here, because Ian, I thought you had some really great points about the goaltending pipeline, and a lot has been said today about why are the Sharks acquiring more goaltending? They just drafted a goalie. They already have goalie prospects. They got 3 NHLers, everything like that. Reimer won't be here next season.
No.
Makiniemi might, and by next season, I mean 23-24.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Makiniemi might not even be there that season.
Makiniemi still gets my vote for not being Zachary Iman, though.
Amon will definitely not be here in 23-24. And Aiden Hill is probably traded before the season begins. So all of a sudden, that's why you acquire the goalies now, because half of them are going to be gone by the end of this year. And now then it'll probably be Kakkonen. You hope it'll be Kakkonen's net because he took it.
Right.
And Strauss-Mann hopefully had a great year with the Barracuda that he gets promoted up to be Kakkonen's backup next year. And then you've got Krona and Goodrow coming in from the pipeline to be the Barracuda goalies next year. And what do you know? You have even symmetry right there.
Yep.
So I think you just hang on to James Reimer. And then if a team like Edmonton comes calling at the deadline, move him then, and you're going to get the same exact asset that you would right now.
Yeah,
I think you get even more personally, but
you might.
But your point, I agree with Kevin, and similar, the analogy that I always point to, how you're talking about the Sharks have a lot of goalies, and the people who say, I believe Ian said it, you can never have too many goalies.
Can't.
Look at the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah.
The Anaheim Ducks, they had about they had Victor Fast, who, say what you want about Victor Fast, but they got an asset for him.
Again, SHL winning goalie at age 38 and retired as a champ.
Right. They had Frederick Anderson, who they were able to get a first-round pick for that became Sam Steele. Didn't get a qualifying offer, but Sam Steele's a good player. But even, beyond the goaltending, I mean, how many years did we talk about Anaheim being a farm for defensemen?
Yep.
And... They got good assets for Josh Manson. They got good assets for Brandon Montour. Good assets for Hampus Lindholm. Even if you have, you've only got 4 in your organization, 4 goalie spots, maybe 5. If you've got 8 guys, you can trade the other 3. You're allowed to do that. I feel like that's, and we're getting way off topic, but I feel it needs to be said. It seems to me there's almost this idea where, like, contracts and roster spots are like locked in, where it says, oh, well, that player would be nice, but how do we do that? We have no cap space. And I feel like people are kind of disregarding the big point of, like, you're allowed to trade money out. The Sharks did it today, like, you don't have to keep everybody. And I kind of feel like that's something folks tend to gloss over, is that you're allowed to get rid of players even if you really like them.
Yeah, I think, like, for me, is the questions obviously I have, going back to Edmonton here quick. I think going on the goalie thing, though, is like, you can never have too many goalies as long as you have places for all of them to play. And right now, other than in the NHL, the Sharks have places for all their goalies to play.
Right.
Yeah, I think going back to Edmonton quick here, like Jack Campbell, I don't like the term. The money's probably fine. I just don't like the term, and again, like, I've wondered if Jack Campbell is going to be a flash in the pan guy, or if he's like, if he's going to be this generation's Tim Thomas. If he turns into this generation Tim Thomas, it's a hell of a move for Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a move. But if he's a flash in the pan, like, this is something that they could definitely be kicking themselves at down the road. Evander Kane, I mean, we know the story there. Like, he's going to score goals. Is the goals going to be worth whatever damage he wreaks in that locker room? Question mark?
They're not going to care about Jack Campbell once Evander Kane is done with the team.
Right, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like, that's, the less said about Evander Kane, the better at this point. Does this have an impact on his arbitration? I don't think so. We talked about that earlier too, though. So yeah, I mean, Edmonton, I think they've done okay. I think they're definitely in the mix to be a playoff team. I think they're probably safely in the playoffs in the Pacific Division. Yeah. Moving on, I have this in no particular order, so this isn't in any, like, good to bad or whatever. I have Seattle up next. They obviously got Andrew Burakovsky for 5 years, $5.5 million. I thought that surprised me a little bit, that I thought he was probably going to go somewhere a little more contendery than Seattle, but Seattle's kind of doing pretty good things. I mean, it's not gonna actualized right now, but I think they are going to be a force when these pieces start really, really falling into place. They also signed goaltender Martin Jones to a 1-year, $2 million contract. I would like Martin Jones' agent to contact me. I need this agent.
You need more information.
I just need this agent. When Kyle Dubas calls me tomorrow after he sees this podcast, I want him to negotiate me a Martin Jones deal. Because I bring nothing. So if he can get me a good deal like Martin Jones, we're good.
Seattle is very intriguing to me. I think you're right, Ian. I think they are kind of on the verge of something here. I mean, we all like Andrei Burakovsky here. I was, sort of putting it out into the universe that I hoped the Sharks would take a sniff at Burakovsky. Obviously, they didn't. But, Burakovsky is there. We like him. Friend of the show, Jared McCann, is there. They got Shane Wright under contract, and I'd be surprised if he doesn't at least get his 9 games. Mm-hmm. And, word around the water coolers, they're going to bring in John Klingberg. That's a huge name. They've got Philip Grubauer in net. I mean, they're sort of building those foundational pieces where maybe around the edges it still looks a bit critical, but the core is in place. And I'm pretty psyched about I would be psyched about the core if I was a Seattle Kraken fan, because they've done a lot of good things considering the on-ice product hasn't really been all that enticing. For people to be a part of, but
also Justin Schultz, 2 years, $3 million AAV.
That was the one where I don't understand Martin Jones because they have Grubauer, they have Dreger.
But Dreger's out for 9 months or whatever, so that's why they brought Martin Jones.
Good point. That's a good point. I did not recall that. That's a good. Okay, all right. Still though, Martin Jones, $2 million. His agent needs to call us.
Get me his agent, please.
Justin Schultz, he is a really good power play defenseman. Not so much of an emphasis on the defense thing, and he keeps getting contracts. So again, Justin Schultz, whoever your agent is, give us a call.
Yeah.
my thing with Burakovsky is Seattle is the perfect place for him to take that next step in his career. It was also a good opportunity to make some extra money coming off a couple women as well. But I identified when we did our free agent frenzy signings game that we do every year, I identified Seattle as one of the teams who really needed to lock in a new left wing. And I'm very frustrated that I wrote Seattle in for Burakovsky and then changed it up to Dallas. Between him and Marchment and Trocheck, I had them all in the right place and undid them all. Oh, no. So sad. But I think it's a good signing, and especially when you are Seattle and you bring in Shane Wright to complement Matty Beniers. Says, all right, we got our center depth for a long time. Let's add some goal scoring wings. So Burakovsky made a lot of sense to me. And the Klingberg thing, I think there's some stock in there. I think there's still room for them to add another big-time defenseman. I don't know why Detroit's not involved more, or maybe they are, and they just those rumors aren't there yet. But I think Klingberg could go to Seattle.
And the exciting thing if you're a Seattle Kraken fan, and obviously this has everything to do with how good of a team Colorado was this year, but Burakovsky put up 61 points while only getting like 16 minutes a night.
Yeah.
You bump that up to 20, and that could be something really interesting. And I do agree, Kevin. I think with Beniers and with Wright down the middle, Seattle is set for minimum 10 years.
Yeah.
But for the time being, again, like we talked about, Yanni Gord is there, our buddy Jared McCann is there, Alexander Wenberg is there. They've got guys. Like I said, I don't think the Kraken are making the playoffs next year, but I kind of want to put an eye on them. Just one, not two, but I do want to keep.
Well, they only have an eye in their logo.
That is true. Yeah. But and they they've got 3 second-round picks for this coming year as well. They almost seem like a sleeper pick to do something else on the trade front if things go their way.
Yeah, definitely.
Something to think about.
Next up, I have the Anaheim Ducks. They signed right wing Frank Vetrano to a 3-year, $3.65 million AAV contract, and center Ryan Sturm for 5 years, $5 million. I like Vetrano. I think I'm okay with him at that price, especially for Anaheim. They have all the cap space in the world. Ryan Sturm at 5x5, little concerning.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
I didn't see the Ryan Strome signing coming. I thought maybe because that was a spot that I considered for Trocheck, and then I was like, nah, their center depth is pretty set. I think Vetrano, despite the fact, maybe his terms are all right. I think it's a big step up from Sonny Milano. Sonny Milano had some really good chemistry with Trevor Zegras, but I'm taking Frankie Vetrano all day over Sonny Milano.
Agreed.
So
yeah, that I agree with. I think there was a lot of flack for them letting go of Sonny Milano, but I mean, Vetrano's an upgrade.
It's just interesting to me. And again, Vetrano, a good player. You know, I know there were a handful of people who were wanting the Sharks to take a look. I was one of those people. Obviously didn't work out. He goes to the Ducks. Ryan Strome, he's a player. I mean, obviously playing with Panarin, he had some good years, but let's see what you do without Panarin. And I don't understand. Like, the Ducks are not a next year team. No. So I don't understand the rationale. Maybe, and you know what? They, according to Cap Friendly, they do only have 10 NHL forwards and 4 NHL defensemen. 11 if you count Silverberg, who's on the injured reserve. So, but point being, that's not a full roster.
No.
And it's a very, very young roster. I mean, Adam Henrique is the wily veteran at 32.
That's yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, for 32, like that, like he's a couple years older than me, you know, but he's the old guy. Like,
I'm really looking forward to when we do our Anaheim show.
Yeah, because
this is a team that if you know, like, as talking about direction, I have no idea what the Ducks are doing. So I'm really looking forward to deep diving that a little bit, because this is a team where I am just perplexed as to what they're doing.
And Pat Verbeek really wanted to overhaul the farm system as well, and they brought in Royce Sommer, which a lot has been said about Royce Sommer in his tenure with the Sharks, and I was kind of stumbled, I will not lie, stumbled into that information that Royce Sommer would be the Ducks AHL coach there a little over a week ago.
Breaking news: Andre Palat, 5-year deal, New Jersey Devils.
Whoa! Well, New Jersey got snubbed by Johnny Gaudreau today,
and on the prediction sheet, who said New Jersey? Nobody.
Oh, we suck this year.
Although worth saying, I do put it out there. He'll be upset with me if I don't. I was texting with Ryan today, and Ryan said, do we think New Jersey circles onto Palat now that they lost out on Gaudreau? So, Ryan, if you're listening, I'll tweet that text out just so everybody knows that you are also smart, just like us.
Also, something we said earlier. Apparently, Balcers to the Panthers is not a done deal yet. So, there's that too.
I think AJ shared it in the chat. Shout out to AJ. But that was I think somebody was a little trigger happy on the press release. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's official tomorrow morning.
For sure. But as of right now, it's not a thing.
Unofficially official, as we say.
Well, right. You know what? I just realized Ryan should know about the New Jersey Devils. So,
You're right.
Sorry, inside joke there.
Moving on to the Vancouver Canucks. They got center Curtis Lazar for 3 years at $1 million. I guess, yay. And they got Mikheyev for 4 years at $4.75. I don't mind that deal for Mikheyev. Curtis Lazar at 3 years. I mean, $1 million, who cares? But 3 years?
I was gonna say, he's another guy where I'm like, who's your agent?
Yeah.
Like, he just keeps getting contracts, and good for him, But
Curtis Lazar did finally take that step forward with Boston this year, though.
True point. He did do that.
Like, I don't think he's anything more than a tweener. Like, if the Sharks had signed Curtis Lazar, I think I'd actually be more upset than signing Nico Sturm.
I would, yeah.
But he's forged an NHL career after being a once highly touted prospect and then falling to complete obscurity. He has at least found his way back to the NHL.
Yeah. Just some other teams. Obviously, I mentioned quiet day for LA. I mean, LA kind of already did their thing when they re-upped Kempe. But quiet day for LA.
Fiala. Well, they
Fiala too. Yeah, so they've kind of
they traded for Fiala. They re-upped Kempe. They also they extended Alexander Edler.
Mm-hmm.
So
at league minimum too.
Right. So they kind of, quiet day, but that's not to say that they did nothing. I don't think.
Correct. Yeah, definitely. And the Calgary Flames lost Johnny Gaudreau, which we'll get to in a little bit, and re-upped Zadorov, making sure that he could not be signed by Mike Grier, which I'm eternally thankful for.
Yeah. Shout out.
But Johnny Gaudreau, I've had Nazem Kadri pegged to Calgary from the start, and I know Kadri's just kind of like sitting back with his eventually Stanley Cup ring, and just like, bring me the money, boys, bring me the money. I've been waiting a long time for this, and I think Calgary's going to throw some stupid offer out tomorrow.
It's funny too because 3 years ago he could have gone to Calgary and axed the trade.
Yep.
Huh, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So I'd be very interested to see what happens there. I do think Calgary is a very different team than they were 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But it does make you think. I think I mean I don't necessarily want to make anybody nervous here, but Kadri does kind of play the style that Mike Grier is looking for. I don't think that means that Mike Grier is going to go after him per se, but Kadri I think would fit really well on Calgary, and I wonder if other teams in the division might look at that and be a little upset over it.
Yeah, Calgary is another team that's going to be really interesting when we deep dive. Now for the main event of the Pacific Division. The Vegas Golden Knights.
This is what y'all subscribe for right here.
Besides
Shark Stock.
The Vegas Golden Knights. Carolina gets left wing Max Pacioretty. They get defenseman Dylan Coghlan. Vegas in return gets future considerations. My favorite player.
This is what we were talking about earlier. The Sharks are off the hook for worst trade of the day.
Yeah.
I understand Vegas is trying to aggressively clear money. I get it. Totally understand. But and credit to the other teams in the league for not letting Vegas bend them over again. But goddamn, dude, Max Pacioretty was probably their best goal scorer, and
an elite forward.
Elite forward.
Like, how is it fair that all these guys have to bid and everything, and then Max Pacioretty just gets given to the Carolina Hurricanes? They don't have to go out and sign anybody; they just get given him, and everyone else is squabbling over Johnny Gaudreau.
That's a great point. That's how I felt about Marc-Andre Fleury last year, when they just gave him away without his even.
Oh.
No, I hope Max Pacioretty didn't find out by Twitter about this trade. Like Fleury did last
news:
year.
The Carolina Hurricanes taking advantage of the Sharks continues. Zach Sawchenko, 2-way deal to Carolina.
Oh, there you go.
All right, so that's interesting to me because Kochetkov, they've got Anderson right now, and I feel like they still have Antti Ranta. So, but they lost Alex Lyon. They obviously traded McAniemi today, so Sawchenko probably falls into that backup role for the Chicago Wolves. Oh, good for him.
Yeah, good for Sawchenko. I mean, again, a guy that I don't think
an undrafted goalie getting NHL time with the Sharks this year, and now getting a contract from a really good organization in terms of player personnel.
And you know what? Really quick, I know again, Vegas deserves all kinds of tomatoes thrown at them for the moves they've pulled the last 2 years. Like, obviously dumping Pacioretty is dumb, and dumping Fleury was dumb. And the guys they threw overboard to make room for other guys, Tuck, Krebs, Nate Schmidt, Kevin's favorite player, like these. Yeah.
I was waiting for Dylan Coughlin to be my favorite player.
All these moves, it's like, man, what do you do? Nick Suzuki, Tomas Tatar,
That's
the list goes on.
Like the trade tree for this Pacioretty thing is
brutal.
Disgusting.
Brutal. Like, bought high on Tatar, then sold him low for Pacioretty, and then sold Pacioretty low. Like, it's like it's kind of astonishing how much they've gotten their lunch money taken today. But all things aside, I think personally, just as somebody who, willingly or unwillingly has their ear to the ground on some Golden Knights happenings, good business getting Riley Smith back in at the same money he was making last year. Like, huge fan favorite for the Las Vegas Knights, and good player, all things aside, and he could have easily gone to another team and made $7 million. And so the fact that he took 5 to stay in Vegas, as much as we don't want to hand out W's, Vegas needed a W, and they got one here.
I don't know.
In that respect.
Yeah.
But again, if you go 1 for 10, you still suck.
Yeah, like asset management, like Saravelli, I think it was Saravelli, or someone posted it earlier. Yeah, it was like you gave up a first, a second, and a third for Tomas Tatar. Then you sent Tatar and Nick Suzuki, who's a hell of a player.
Yep.
To get Pacioretty.
And a second.
And all you have to show for it is Carolina owes you a back rub. That's
what would
brutal.
We could. Okay, curious your thoughts. When the news gets really, really thin, maybe August 21st ish. Imagine we do a 45-minute show on this trade tree.
I dig it.
Hey, not before I do my Pat Falloon to Anthony Bitetto trade tree with Eric. Because that trade tree officially ended today when Anthony Bitetto signed with, I think it was the Florida Panthers.
There you go.
So the original lineage back to Pat Falloon, the first pick ever by the Sharks in 1991, has officially ended today.
That's amazing.
So.
They also, as you mentioned, Riley Smith.
Do we want to dump on Vegas more really quick? I think.
Give me a second.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
So running it back. So for Tomas Tatar, it was a first-round pick, second-round pick, third-round pick.
Correct.
So that first-round pick, Joe Veleno. We were big fans of Joe Veleno at the time. Mm-hmm. Remains to be seen what happens there. That second-round pick, originally Columbus's, then Vegas, then Montreal. I'm sorry. No, I'm looking at the wrong second-round pick here. That second-round pick was Kevin, help me out. Mastrosimone?
Oh, Master Simone.
I'm not too familiar with that prospect, but remains to be seen. And the third that was in 2020, that one might have been flipped around a couple times because I don't see anything relating to it. But even then, I mean, again, like Joe Veleno is a good player. Mm-hmm. We were obviously big fans, and to pile on even more, here we go. The third round pick was actually 2021. Apologies. Aiden Hereshchuk. Kevin, thoughts?
Yeah,
He's a guy.
I remember he was in my list. That's about it.
Yeah, I was hoping that it would have been like 3 home runs, but Joe Veleno, big name. Mm-hmm. Also, and then as you mentioned, Ian, Tomas Tatar, who gave up a lot of assets for. Take him. You take Nick Suzuki, really good player. Montreal's best player, probably. Second-round pick to Montreal for Max Pacioretty. That second-round pick got flipped to L.A. Sam Fagemo.
There you go.
Yeah, that one's Fagemo, by the way.
Well, I've heard it both ways.
The Vegas Golden Knights thing is going to be very interesting to watch. Obviously, they brought in Bruce Cassidy, so in that light, that was a big victory, probably their biggest victory in my opinion. That's huge. But what kind of team is Vegas going to have? Again, every single year they have a different team. Now Max Pacioretty is gone after they sold the farm basically to get him, and now give him with Coghlan to Carolina for nothing. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm curious to see why Carolina, like back to what Ian said, how did Carolina end up getting him? Teams were frothing at the mouth to get Goodrow. And then when Goodrow went, then there was Palat. And now Palat's off the board. And Nichushkin already got his big deal with Colorado. And Burakovsky got his big deal with Seattle.
David Perron to Detroit.
Mason Marchment signed in Dallas. So like these left wings are just going by the wayside, just bam, 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 bam. Can't keep up.
When I heard he was going to Carolina...
waited a couple of days to trade Match Pacioretty. There might have been a team out there.
Well, and that's... Go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, the one thing I was like, when I heard it was Carolina that Pacioretty was going to, and they didn't know the return at first, like, I wanted so bad, just for the chaos, for, like, to be Brent Burns on, like, further reduced salary. I wanted that so bad. Just for the chaos.
See, wow. I think... The rationale that you had with the Brent Burns deal, Ian, I almost think it applies here too, but to Vegas, this, you can be 10% over the salary cap. It was not time sensitive to move Pacioretty.
Yeah.
Vegas didn't, they filed the paperwork for Riley Smith and they re-signed Brett Howden. All right.
1.5 million 1 year.
Yeah. Like, the thing is, like, and again, Riley Smith, by all accounts, Riley Smith had already committed to coming back to Vegas in March. You're telling me you couldn't have kept that in the hopper a little bit longer? And to your point, Ian, trading Pacioretty was not time sensitive. Why not wait a couple days, as you said, Kevin, and then maybe you go to, you say, hey, well, Carolina's going to take him for nothing, and Team B might come back to you and say, well, that's ridiculous. We'll give you X round pick for him.
What if Calgary doesn't get Nazem Kadri?
Yeah.
What's Calgary going to do?
Nothing. They're probably going to, if they don't get somebody to replace Goodrow, they probably trade Matthew Tkachuk and just do like a quick reset.
Yeah.
But if they're going to lose him anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, like, you could bring in Pacioretty there,
Yeah. And that's the thing. You start
Carolina
telling teams,
gives way better back rubs.
The only thing is though, Vegas would be trading with a divisional.
That's true.
Though.
That is
sure. But same thing. I find it very hard to believe if you go to, and we'll use Calgary for example, you go to Calgary and said, hey, well, we got a deal for him to go to Carolina and they're paying nothing. Calgary's going to be like, well, that's ridiculous. We'll give you a sixth for him. And that's still not good value, but that's better value than nothing. Yeah, I think Vegas kind of fumbled the bag a little bit on that one.
Yep.
Yeah. When Vegas does bad, it's good. I mean, what can I say?
Hell yeah, it is. I
mean, they're still like, I think, again, like,
they're still a good team.
They're a good team. I think they're going to be definitely in the hunt to win the Pacific. I might even put them at the top of the Pacific still, if they can be healthy. And I think Bruce Cassidy's a hell of a coach. So
I don't know though. I mean, they're already over the cap. They need to get Nick Hague signed. They need to get Nick Wass signed. Keegan Colasar needs a new deal. The feather in their cap is that they can go over the cap by $7.8 million by virtue of Shea Weber's deal, so that's in their favor. But you still have to be able to build a cap compliant team before you go over the cap with LTIR.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, like everyone knows, Columbus caught the biggest fish in the sea. Johnny Gaudreau, 7 years, $9.8 million. I was surprised Columbus a little bit. I'm not going to lie. Although, like, some of the other teams that he was rumored to go to are not exactly juggernaut teams either. But Columbus did kind of surprise me a little bit.
I heard, so while you and AJ were doing the show earlier today, again, Teal Town Live, go check it out after our show here, if you haven't already. That's when the rumors started coming in about Johnny Gaudreau possibly to Columbus. And when I heard it, I thought, And then I started thinking more about it, and I was like, yeah, okay, that kind of makes sense. Because I still, despite this past season, consider Columbus as a team on the rise. They are trying to, restore some faith for their fan base. The number of players who have left Columbus is a laundry list, and the number of players who have come in is very short, and I think that's why it's such a surprising signing. But Johnny Gaudreau can really go out there and be a star without really having to worry about anyone else being a star. Yeah. I thought New Jersey made sense because then you've got Gaudreau playing with a player like Jack Hughes or maybe even Nico Hischier.
I don't hate Johnny Gaudreau with Boone Jenner though.
You know what I think is really nice though? Pierre-Luc Dubois now has an incentive to get a deal done a little bit faster with Columbus. When you see your general manager go out there and say,
he is a Winnipeg Jet.
Oh, we're giving you Johnny Gaudreau to play with.
He is a Winnipeg
Jet.
In the Patrick Laine deal.
Patrick Laine.
Okay, but
we're giving you someone to come,
But to your point, Kevin, if you're Columbus, you can do Johnny Gaudreau on the left wing, Patrick Laine on the right wing. You could do me in the middle, and that would be a pretty good line. You know what I mean?
I'm trying to think of who the heck's center.
I wonder what they do with Laine though, because I mean obviously they are gonna have they're gonna have to do some cap gymnastics to get Laine done.
A lot of people on the Twitter are talking about Gus Nyquist being the casualty.
That makes sense.
He's at $5.5 million right now, going to be a UFA next summer.
Yeah, that could definitely be a casualty. I think it's something that
bring him back to the Sharks.
Jesus Christ.
No, I'm just kidding. The thing that's interesting to me about this Johnny Gaudreau stuff, and so he comes in, his contract with the Columbus Blue Jackets, obviously it's a 7-year deal, $68.25 million, $68,250,000.
Mm-hmm.
His offer from the Calgary Flames, $84 million. By all accounts, his offer from the New Jersey Devils was in the 76, 77 neighborhood. And Islanders, nobody knows what the Islanders put up because Lou Lamoriello, it's the Chamber of Secrets there.
It's true.
Point being is Columbus was a sleeping giant. Everybody was thinking, either Calgary or New Jersey or the Philadelphia Flyers. Nobody was talking about Columbus.
The Flyers.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Flyers, ridiculous. Nobody was talking about Columbus, so they're out of left field. Of the 3 teams that are close to his hometown, that were reportedly interested. Columbus is the furthest away, and they gave him the less money, or the least amount of money, total money, and no signing bonus either. So, and again, not to disparage Ohio or anything. I'm sure it's very nice there, but less money, further away from home, no signing bonus, no elite number 1 center to play with. Why'd you go there?
I'm curious to see, but I dig it.
It makes me think there's another move in the hopper.
Yeah,
I think so as well. And I'm always of the why don't you take less to help your team bring in more assets.
Sure.
I think this could be a situation like you just said. They bring in someone else, or they move someone else to bring someone in, and away the Blue Jackets go. But I dig it. I'm happy for them.
AJ saying what I was thinking.
This affects the. I want to what?
AJ was saying in the chat, couture to Columbus.
Oh my God.
There you go. I want to know how this affects the Cleveland Monsters, though.
That's true. That is a good question.
That was for Like a Tiger there.
I mean, it's so the Blue Jackets are such a fascinating team, but like that division's death.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like that division is death. It's weird. It's weird to me. Like I mean, good for him. I mean, he got what he wanted. And he picked his spot, but I just like that division's death. I don't know how Columbus claws into the playoffs in that division.
See?
And I would,
I think they need to improve their goaltending first.
Yeah, and I would say if only they were in the Atlantic, but even then, the Atlantic's gotten better too. Like you have Florida, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Boston, Detroit. I think is a better team. Ottawa, I think is a better team.
Yep.
Like, the Eastern Conference.
Ottawa's been fascinating. Like for Melnick dies, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do stuff now.
Yeah, no kidding. The Eastern Conference as a whole is very, very deadly, if you ask me. Like,
yeah,
it's gonna, like, I think this year we knew who the 8 playoff teams were by Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
I think next year or this coming year, depending on when you're listening to this, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if we see most of the Eastern Conference playoff spots clinched really late.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, staying in the Metro, Evgeny Malkin.
I was just gonna say
4 years, $6.1 million. Pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah.
Who was that? I was talking over you.
Evgeny Malkin. 4 years, $6.1 million.
We said they were going to get Malkin, Letang, and Raquel done, and they did all 3.
Yeah,
they had to.
Yeah, but shout out to us.
Absolutely, it's all us. It had nothing to do with, I'm sure, Sidney Crosby hearing that Evgeny Malkin was going to go to free agency, and I know you guys have probably seen the picture of the shark with the assault rifle. I'm assuming Penguin has some sort of weapon too, because
Tiger did a graphic with Penguin as well.
yes
which I don't know where this photo came from. I don't know if it's shopped, but it's Iceberg holding a pistol.
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from, but I love it. I saw a funny tweet that said Malkin said, "I want to test free agency," and Crosby replied with, "The only thing you're testing is my patience."
Yeah.
And I think that's an accurate descriptor of how the negotiations went. I mean, you take a quick peek, right? Malkin and Letang, same AAV. They both took a haircut to stick around. I mean, between the two of them, Pittsburgh got $4.5 million in cap space, and they were able to funnel most of that over to keeping Raquel.
Oh, it is. It's from what movie is that? Face Off? No, not Face Off. What was that? Sudden Death
was the Penguins.
Sudden Death.
Yeah. Sudden Death. That was it. Face Off was Cage.
Sudden Death. Love it.
For those who have no idea what we're talking about, I'll share the link to the tweet in the chat here.
Yeah. Yes. When John Van Damme kills Iceberg. That is correct. That's amazing. I think I also saw like the videos making the rounds of like the dog pushing the person's head underwater. Like that was probably Sidney Crosby to Ron Hextall.
And we talked about it when we did our Penguins show a few weeks ago, but I think it's more to the forefront now. The Penguins are currently over the cap, not by much, but they're over the cap. And you know what? I think with some roster moves, I think they would be cap compliant, but it still does make you wonder, like Kasperi Kapanen is an RFA. Mm-hmm. Where do they go from there? Marcus Pettersson and John Marino have been rumored to be available for trade. Does something happen there? Does Pittsburgh sweet talk somebody into taking Mike Matheson? Remains to be seen. Penguins could send a guy, they could easily send Drew O'Connor to the AHL and be cap compliant, but I feel like they would want a bit more flexibility than just, shuffling a guy up and down.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't like them in net still, but I think that, like, if you let Evgeny Malkin walk, like, who are you getting in free agency to replace him? It'd be a downgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I feel like it's as much as silly as it might feel to keep a team together that's been bounced in the first round, how many years in a row now?
4 years in a row.
4 years in a row. Like,
and actually, one of those years they didn't even make it to the first round.
Right. So I mean, like, I can see where people would be like, well, keeping the band together seems kind of silly, but I don't know how you replace Evgeny Malkin if you let him go either. It's one of those catch-22 things where I think they're good enough to be there. I just don't know if they've got the tools to go all the way.
Speaking of the re-signings, I forgot they also re-signed Casey DeSmith as well, who I think is a very capable backup goalie. So they got that one done. The only player they're really not bringing back is Evan Rodriguez, and that was someone I thought would benefit him as far as his career standpoint to return, but he just got a new agent, and when that happens, that says, oh, he's in it for the money all the way.
And Pittsburgh, they did also picked up Jan Rutta on a 3-year deal, just under $3 million, which I like Jan Rutta. I think 2 3/4 is a bit rich, but maybe that's me.
It's a bit rich, but he will fill in the void left by whoever they moved out, who's more expensive on that blue line.
Sure, and Andy Mann is also mentioning, and we mentioned it as well back when we did that show. The Penguins, if they wanted to, they could trade Jason Zucker tomorrow. So they have options.
Yep, absolutely.
To Carolina for future considerations.
Fucking hell. Sergachev is going to be in Tampa Bay for 8 more years at $8.5 million AAV. I like Sergachev. I don't know. I mean, he's probably worth the 8.5. Yeah.
I think this makes sense. I think he definitely deserves the money that he was given today. I just it's like, man, oh man, where are they going to come up with that cap space?
They're going to have a roster of like 6 guys.
Yeah.
See,
Sergachev had a funny interview, guys, today though, because he was like, yeah, play for John Cooper. He's a really good coach. He's really hard on us. I mean, not like kicking us or anything like that. And I'm like, we're going Bill Peters here? Like, and then he says, but he wants me to play physical, and so I try to be not like cross-checking or like kicking. And I'm going, what the heck are you talking about? What kind of upbringing did Mikhail Sergachev get? Like,
he's really getting into the semantics of it all.
Yeah.
I like when people have to communicate in their like second or third language.
I'm very. This one has me peaked a little bit. So, good player, obviously. Yes, the points tell you that. Block shots like you wouldn't believe. He hits. He's got takeaways. He's the complete package. Mm-hmm. $8.5 million is a lot. I mean, he's making more than Victor Hedman, and I know Ian. Victor Hedman gets a lot of publicity because he's Victor Hedman. I know that's how you feel, but. Victor Hedman has a Norris Trophy. Victor Hedman has scored more than 38 points in a season.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the player. I think Tampa Bay would be stupid to get rid of him, whether that's trade or they released him for some. Exactly. Yeah. Then they had to give away Ryan McDonough for nothing. Mm-hmm. They have to keep Sergachev. Aside from the fact that he's a young player, he's really good. Really good player.
Good. He's really good. Yeah.
But I think and 8 years. I'm fine with 8 years. I mean, he's 24, totally fine with 8 years, but $8.5 million is very rich for me. Now, maybe he played 22 minutes or averaged 22 minutes this year. Maybe with McDonough gone, maybe that goes up to 24 minutes, 25 minutes, and that's where your extra offense comes. But that, as good of a player he is, as important of a player he is, the $8.5 million is a gamble, if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, Tampa for 23-24 has 12 players signed. Their cap hit is $79.7 million, just under $3.8 million cap space to fit 7 skaters just to ice a full lineup.
They have Brent Seabrook 6.875 that they can stash on long term though.
Yeah,
and
now with Sergachev though, I don't think his contract kicks in until the following year. I think, and same with Anthony Cirelli, who got a new deal today too, and.
Chernak is. Too. I'm curious to know what you think about Chernak, Kevin. I love Chernak too, but 8 years, $5.2 million a season for Eric Chernak. Okay, cool.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair for Chernak.
Yeah,
I really like Sergachev. I do horse eye the dollar amount a little bit though, but I think. Mm-hmm. But I think when guys like Darnell Nurse are making 9.5, does Sergachev make 8.5? Yeah, yeah, he does.
It's also, I am curious. A couple things that I am curious about. So Eric Chernak, he played most of the year, pretty much all of the year actually, with Ryan McDonough, and so I do wonder. Okay, McDonough's gone. Mm-hmm. Are you with Sergachev? Jan Rutta's gone. So do they put Hedman Hedman and Chernak together. Does Chernak play with Sergachev? I mean, who's to say? But Chernak's sort of safety blanket, so to speak, is now gone. I'm curious to see how that affects him. I still, we obviously like Chernak on this podcast, so I don't think it will be an issue, but I am curious to see where it goes. It's also worth mentioning, I think, that, yes, okay, so the Lightning, who are famously strapped by the cap, just committed, like $23 million starting next year. The experts say that by 2024, the salary cap is going to be close to $90 million. So it is a lot to bank on, but if you are somebody who likes to look 2, 3, 4 years down the road, the Lightning could get cap help just by virtue of the cap going up.
Right.
And same with the Sharks, and same with every other team,
Sticking in the East, Claude Giroux is in Ottawa for 3 years at $6.5 million AAV. I really like everything Ottawa's done. Is it enough that... Are they going to make the playoffs? I don't know. I think they're going to be a glass cannon, to be completely honest. I think they're going to score a ton of goals, but they're also going to allow a ton of goals.
Look, Ottawa has an incredible amount of youth coming in here. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the Barracuda in a way. I mean, this is substantially bigger than the Barracuda, obviously.
Correct.
But they have a lot of youth coming in. They already have a lot of youth. Josh Norris has already been around long enough to be a restricted free agent. And to bring in Claude Giroux, an established veteran, over 1,000 games played, and obviously no Stanley Cup, but still a lot of experience, playoff experience.
There's a lot of really good players without rings.
Yeah. And I think he's the perfect player to help bring these guys along, for them to mentor them while still being a really good player at his age.
Well, and at only $6.5 million too, as well,
and a good contract hit. Yeah. So I think everything about this is perfect for Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They need to get Josh Norris signed. But aside from that, I mean, Alex Formenton, Matthew Joseph, I mean, these are guys that shouldn't take too much work to get signed. Same with Eric Brandstrom. I know he's he's an interesting prospect at this point in the game, but I think he's still a guy worth keeping around. But to your point, Kevin, Josh Norris, that's the big one they need to take care of. And then, and then they're in there. I mean, I think, a bold statement here, but, you've got Norris, Tkachuk, Giroux. We didn't even talk about DeBrincat.
Yeah.
Batherson, Stützle.
They brought in Cam Talbot.
Cam Talbot
in goal. Yeah, I mean,
Ottawa, I don't know that they're going to make the playoffs, but they're sniffing around. And
definitely.
Does Ottawa have one of the best top sixes in the league?
They might. I just think they're a glass cannon.
Yeah.
Ottawa, I think, has a little bit of a better trajectory than Anaheim did last year, where Anaheim came out on fire and then the wheels fell off. I think Ottawa is going to come out on fire this next season, and then the wheels are going to fall off, but they're going to still be sniffing around the playoffs. I'm with you, Jerk. I think they're not going to make the playoffs, but
they might sneak in a wild card, maybe. But again, the Metro is such a gong show that the Metro could easily take the wild card spots themselves.
The good news for Ottawa is they get to play against Matt Murray this season.
That's true. And I think the other thing too, like I do have questions about Toronto, especially in net. I think they took a big gamble, which is why Kyle Dubas needs to hire me now before he gets fired in the offseason. I have questions. I think Ottawa could take advantage of a team that I think is going to fall backwards a little bit, like in the Boston Bruins. I don't know. I just don't think it's enough.
By all accounts, they are actively looking for a defenseman. Was kind of hoping that they, Ottawa seems like the type of people who would pay good price for Brent Burns and not think twice about it. So I was kind of hoping that was going to all come down, but maybe Ottawa is a sleeper for John Klingberg. I don't think they are. I think Klingberg probably has 3 teams he'd prefer to go to over Ottawa, but maybe Ottawa is a sleeper. maybe. And again, there's a lot of guys available for trade too. The Jacob Chikrin has kind of been married to them for the last couple weeks now, and I do agree with you, Ian. I think they are a bit of a glass cannon. They're going to score a lot of goals, but outside of Shabbat and Artem Zub, that blue line is
it's pretty suspect.
It's something.
There's been a lot of rumors about Mac Weegar being traded from Florida to Ottawa. And
Weegar would be really nice for them, I think. But I'm with you. Definitely Glass Canyon. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but if they get a defenseman, they're going to be interesting to watch.
They're going to be fun. It's going to be a fun team to watch.
That's kind of the forwards I think are good. Maybe they need a bottom six guy. Maybe they need Balcers back, or Dahlén. He was drafted by them. And the goaltending is dialed in with Cam Talbot. It's really the blue line that is kind of 50-50 for me. If they can get a defenseman, I don't know that I want to say playoffs, but I feel a lot more comfortable saying it.
So answering Tiger in the chat, I do have my Toronto Maple Leafs jersey on.
Your Toronto Maple Leafs jersey, nice.
Yeah, I do. Last one I thought I'd finish on this one. The new Leafs reverse retro. Yeah, it is. Robert Thomas in St. Louis, 8 years, 8.125 AAV.
Very expensive contract. And I like Robert Thomas. And that's the thing. I think Robert Thomas he's a very unique player. He is a incredible passer. I mean, he had I believe he had 57 assists this year. Like he's very unique. He's physical, he's a hell of a passer, and he kind of does everything you want him to do. And I like the player. Yeah. Again, I think he's a unicorn, but $8.25 million. I mean, you're banking on him, what he did this year. You're banking on him doing it again. And I would say that's probably likely, but it's not guaranteed.
The contracts like that, Robert Thomas making $8.25, makes me stomach Nico Sturm at $2 million a whole lot more. And they're not the same player. I'm not comparing. Right. I'm just saying salary comparison. I'm like, yeah, Nico Sturm making 1/4 of what Robert Thomas makes sounds about right. But wow, oh wow. And they have Robert Thomas's rights. It's not like he was going to be escaping the unrestricted free agency anytime soon. So I don't know why they felt the need to do this. Like, paying him that amount of money isn't going to help Vladimir Tarasenko, who wants out of St. Louis. Like, he still wants out of St. Louis.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's. I don't know. I don't know where the Blues are going with that one. Like, I can't believe he's making more than $6 million.
I think they're banking because again, like 57 assists. I mean, that's crazy. I think they're banking on him taking another step forward. I mean, he's 23, but you're right, Kevin. Like, that is a lot of dollars for, maybe if you want to split hairs, $6.5 million worth of work, $7 million on a crappy team. The type of player Robert Thomas is, I think ultimately he will be worth the contract, but it's a choice to do it now.
I'm curious, what does this mean for Jordan Kyrou?
Yeah, that's a guy I would love the Sharks to take a sniff on.
I'm curious.
Especially because then he'd stop scoring against us every time we play the Blues.
Yeah, I'd like to reach out to I would love to hear the Blues, the Let's Go Blues guys take on it. I'm sure they have a show that I can go listen to because I'm curious what they think about the deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one. I did not expect that one today. My eyes definitely bulged out of my head when I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there was a bunch of other signings today. I thought those were the super interesting ones. I'm sure there's other ones that are probably super interesting too.
Darcy Kemper going to Washington.
Darcy Kemper going to. I mean, a lot of the goalie moves I think are
which we all called. Yeah. We all called that one.
Yeah, we got all the obvious ones.
Right, that's the thing.
One of my favorite tweets of the day, I don't remember his full name, but I think it was Tim something. he said a year or the off season, like the week after Washington won the Cup, Washington traded Philip Grubauer to Colorado. And then a week after Colorado wins the Cup, or a couple weeks or whatever, Colorado loses Darcy Kemper to the Capitals. So
everything comes
kind
around.
of a weird crossover there.
Do you guys think Kemper was overpaid?
I
don't think so.
$5 million, right?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I almost wonder it's the same thing as Jack Campbell. The dollars are fine. The term has me a little sus.
Here's my problem with the Darcy Kemper contract, because I think it's warranted. And Darcy Kemper, I mean,
$5.25 million.
Darcy Kemper is a goalie who I think when we first started doing this show, he was holding out of Minnesota out of his entry level contract, and it's like, what are you doing? So he wants to be paid. It seems like he's a really nice, genuine guy. Like he really does. When his interviews are awesome. I think he's got a great personality, but he wants to get paid. You know. I think this contract holds up or could hold up to be the worst of the day. And not because of the player, because of the situation. I think Washington is on the downturn. They're losing Nicholas Backstrom maybe for forever. And their pipeline is starting to get a bit depleted. It's not bad. I just don't know if there's a whole lot of true NHL caliber guys left in their pipeline outside of like Hendrik Lapierre coming in. They've got Connor McMichael, but these are not players who are going to be filling Backstrom's shoes. The wild card that is Evgeny Kuznetsov. You never know what's going to happen there. I think if Washington doesn't figure it out defensively, they're falling out of the playoffs, and then Kemper's contract's looking like a complete bust.
I mean, murder, like death, the death division of the NHL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I that's a good point, Kevin, because everything is sort of happening at once for them. You know, I mean, like you know, all the things you mentioned, but as it is, you know, I've not been pumped with their blue line since they won the Stanley Cup, and they've done nothing to address that since. And obviously, John Carlson is a really good defenseman. I like Dmitry Orlov, but everybody else, I'm like, are you an NHL defenseman? Like maybe
I like Kempny, but he's
gone.
Kind of a shell of what he once was,
and he's gone.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
You know, Palat's deal in the Devils is apparently a 5x6. Sorry.
Okay.
I like Andre Palat. If I'm a Devils fan, I'm a little, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but it was very obvious to me that Palat had his most success when he was with Stamkos. And so if for whatever reason Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier, you know, if they're obviously not Steven Stamkos, but if they can't get him the puck, I could see, you know, at $6 million, I could see Palat be like a 45-point guy, which would be brutal for them.
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of like Tampa guys when they leave Tampa Bay. I'm always like, good for them, but I'm always a little sus with the number.
Well, prime example, dude. Nemesnikov, Tampa Bay traded him when he was having a career year, and he hasn't even gotten close to that since they traded him away. Now he's back with Tampa.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of smart. I mean, he played his best hockey with Stamkos and Kucherov. You lose Palat, why not just throw him back there and you know, get some cheap top line production.
Lanical, thanks for the donation. Brilliant show tonight, guys.
Yes.
We do our best.
Shout out to Lanical.
I mean, I think this is probably, on that note, I think this is probably a good place that we can put this thing to bed. A little bit of an old school TTG tonight, but I don't think we're gonna make this a regular thing again. I'd like to get back to our shows where we kind of get a topic and hammer it out.
For those of you who joined late, thanks for still tuning in. And we swear we did talk about the Sharks for over an hour. It was just the first half of the show. So go back and rewatch if you joined late.
I mean, we had over 100 people at peak time. I mean, super, super awesome.
125
Yeah,
is what I saw.
I've got so many other screens going on, so I haven't seen. But I appreciate, obviously, we appreciate everyone hanging out with us tonight. If you like obviously, like when Sharks things happen, we're going to talk about it, but we also talk about about just a bunch of other cool stuff too, or dumb stuff, depending on your opinion. And so if you like, the more of the what's going around, on around the league, or, opinions of other teams from our perspective, definitely keep tuning in this summer. Because again, we're going to talk about, for sure, things we're going to do. Like, we're definitely going to talk about all the Pacific Division teams. That's 7 shows right there. Plus, God knows what else will happen. I think it's going to be super awesome. Yeah. So anyway, Kevin Lacey, final thoughts.
Well, I see we got a poll in the chat, and I don't agree with either one of the options there. For me, I think it's just stay the course if you are a Sharks fan. I hope that this show tonight brought you at least a little more, I don't know, helped you get a little more patient with the process. It's going to be a process. There's no quick fix. Mike Greer's been around for 9 days, officially for 9 days. I'm wearing this wasn't even planned. I'm wearing the story so far shirt for the Sharks, and that's what this is. This is the story so far, and we're only at about the TH of the process, maybe even just the T. So just let Mike Greer do his thing. In a couple of years, if it sucks, then we can all hate him. But let's just chill out here. I was surprised, actually, though. A lot of people were in agreement with me online, so I always appreciate that. I thought I was going to be butting heads with Hockey Jerk all night on this show, so I'm glad we kept that peaceful. But thanks for joining. I'm at Kevin Lacey 22 on most social media platforms.
Hockey Jerk, final thoughts.
I'm just laughing that you were surprised that people agreed with you. Like, because you have good takes,
No,
like,
the thing is, the first people who were out there were like, "Oh my God, this is the worst thing ever," and then the people who shared my opinion started to creep in from there.
I think it would. I like specifically with the Burns trade, but obviously the signing as well. Could it be better? Sure. Should it be better? Sure.
Yeah.
But even the Burns trade, none of these teams are hurting the Sharks' chances at making the playoffs. You know, if anything, they've stayed exactly the same. And I was very flustered when it all came down because, as I've said, Mike Greer's been GM for 9 days, and the only moves I liked was trading down for picks, and we know how that happened, and getting a new soda sponsor at the tank, and that doesn't mean shit because I don't live in San Jose. So I was very flustered with the whole thing. But then you take a step back and you really think about it. Vegas let the Sharks off the hook for worst trade of the day, which was very nice of them. And there's a plan. We don't know where the plan is going. We don't know where this road is taking us, but it's taking us somewhere. And I'm curious to see what happens, whether that's Couture, whether that's LeBanc, whether that's Aiden Hill, whoever goes out next, if anyone goes out next. I am curious to see what happens because, whatever you think about the type of player that Mike Greer wants, he doesn't want the Sharks to be shitty. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
And, you just got to, like you said earlier, Kevin, trust the process. The story so far. And we'll see.
We have a new poll, by the way.
Amazing. Yeah, I think my final thoughts are kind of in a similar vein, right? Like, again, I'm not going to say, I'm not super excited by anything Mike Greer has done so far. And maybe I don't like the way all the pieces are going together. But, I mean, I'm not, I don't want people to come away from that thinking oh my God, bring back Doug Wilson. Doug Wilson left this team in absolute shambles. It's going to take some time to undo the late reign of Doug Wilson. That's just the reality of it. There's contracts that were thought to be near impossible to move, and some of those still exist, but one of them moved today. So I mean, I'm going to let this play out. I haven't, completely damned the Mike Greer era of San Jose Sharks, but I just hope there's something that happens at some point where I'm going, yeah, fuck yeah, we finally did something that I'm super excited about. And I think that's the problem I have with this team right now. There's, on the NHL side, there's really nothing I'm excited about this season. I think the season's going to be rough. I'm way more excited for the Barracuda than I am the Sharks. That's just where I am, and I think it's going to take a lot to change that perspective, especially if we're going to have a bunch of, if we're going to have 3 third lines and everyone that's interests me is on the Barracuda. I mean, that will definitely divert my eyes there more. But that's it is what it is at this point. We gotta have it play out and see what happens. Obviously, again, this was a long show. I appreciate everybody for being here. If you are catching this on the audio, I hope we didn't kill your dog by having him walk for 2.5 hours in potentially really hot heat where you guys are. And if you ever want to follow me on Twitter at IanBlogsHockey on the Twitter machine, I generally respond. Like, if you tweet at me with a question, I respond 99.9% of the time, unless I think the question is just someone trolling me. But yeah, I mean, other than that, let me just get us out of here. Again, if you like what you hear, please subscribe. Hit the bell, get notified when we do videos. We do videos a lot. Like, we've done a lot of videos in the past just few days, right? And as things happen, we're gonna cover it. Also, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, wherever whatever your poison is, you can probably find us there. But other than that, guys, we really appreciate you being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back sooner than later. And with that, good night.